Good to go, Jess?
Sorry, I was on mute. We're recording.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for Tuesday, June 16, 2020, 7:30 p.m. This is an online remote meeting where people are joining us virtually. First thing I'd like to do before kicking off, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So let's do roll call in the order that we typically are seated going around the room. And I'm going to start on this side with Mary.
Mary Lopresti.
Joshua Dykstra.
Pete Sabras.
John Kerwin.
Dave Sauter.
Pat Cotarella. Dan Wall.
Brett Olbreeze.
Jessica Pennell.
Steve McCary.
Keith Rosenfeld.
And Dan, I heard you as well.
Dan Wall's here.
Thank you, Dan. And Jesse? Okay, Jesse is not joining us yet. He already alerted me that he will be here, though he's not here right at the moment. So I'm just making a note of that. And for seating of alternates, at this point, since we're going to be moving into public hearings, I'm not going to seat any alternates at this time, since we all can participate in the public hearing aspect of it. So the first thing we'll move into is going to be Z20-010-403-407-411 Roosevelt Drive, New Haven Rowing Club. Owner, New Haven Rowing Club Incorporated. Applicant, Stuart Lathers and Associates, LLC. Special exception, Article 5, Section 5.3.1, non-commercial recreational use. This has been tabled for a little bit due to the virtual setting, but we need to be able to, we do need to move on with this. I've already read into it, or the prior commission already has read into the intents regarding the public hearing. So I'm going to move to correspondence that's been received that might need to be read into the record. And I'm going to check with Pat and Jess on that regarding any correspondence.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Pat Cotarella here. I have a petition. Would you like me to read the petition?
If we could read, the basis of the petition, we don't have to read all the names or anything like that.
Well, there's written 3 names. I don't think
that would be helpful.
Okay. As residents and taxpayers who live on the Housatonic River, we are concerned about the negative impact that an increased rowing presence will have for our quality of life here. The increased amount of non-residents and non-members of the NHRC using the river because of this one entity. This will be putting an increased strain on an already crowded river. Limited use of the river while training, use of amplified megaphones by coaches during training, shutting the river down during races. It used to be 1/2 a day and now it's 2 full days. Therefore, we are opposed to the plans for a new storage building as it stands. This will specifically increase the size of their current facility. The proposed structure includes the name Hopkins School on it. We ask that the limits be set on the amount of people and boats that will be using the river from that property. As per the club's outline video, expand, develop, and prosper. And there are 103 names on here from various towns, not just from Oxford. And that's all I have.
Okay. Was there any other new correspondence that we had not read into the record yet?
I do not believe so.
I'm looking at my notes here and I'm not seeing anything as well either. Okay, very good. So this is going to be the opportunity if there's any members of the public that do want to speak. However, I want to turn to the commission first before we have the public jump in with any comments that they might have. The applicants are here, I presume?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. And so this would be the time basically for the commission to ask any additional questions that they might have. I know we had an initial conversation originally this, but I didn't know if there was any new questions or comments they wanted to put out there at this time with the applicants present.
Mr. Chairman, this is Joe Wren. How are you?
Very good, Joe, thank you.
We had back in March, 3 months ago, hard to believe, we had a fairly detailed presentation, if you recall. Stu Lathers is with me in my office, and John Gorman is also on the line, and all three of us were present at that March meeting. And we have a brief presentation to make that probably would resolve some of the questions that may be asked. And some other things that have been addressed as well. So if we may have a few minutes of your time to go through that, and then we certainly can answer any questions.
You may, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Stu Lathers, architect, 319 Peck Street in New Haven. I'm here with Joe Wren. John Gorman from our organization is also here independently. Thanks again for working out this remote process. There have been some misunderstandings in terms of our past, present, and future membership in the public discourse, that is to say the petition, which occurred outside of our relationship here and our discussion with the P&Z Commission. Our group wasn't privy to that document. So it was circulated, and we didn't really know what was said or implied beyond what was written. So simply to clarify just a few things, our New Haven Rowing Club membership has been more or less stable for the last 15 to 20 years. Certain of our members age out, and certain new members join in, but more or less the club itself has been quite stable for a good period. We don't anticipate increasing the size of our group or the intensity of use in the near future. We're open to all people who want to join, as rowing is a great form of exercise. We're volunteer run, and every year at our size, at our current size, I mean, of course, it's a challenge to maintain our leadership, our staff, our events, and maintain our buildings and grounds. All of that is, again, on a volunteer basis. Just as a short background, rowing shells have been on that section of the river. It's sort of unbelievable, but they've been on that river there since 1916, long before most of the houses were built and long before any of us were born. I should note also that Yale University's rowing program, in terms of the budget, facilities, number of athletes, and the number of coaching launches, is much larger than the New Haven Rowing Club's program, by a margin of roughly 4 to 5 times larger. They row at different times as well. So that said, I also want to clarify that the Hopkins School has used our facility for 15 years. And it's noteworthy to keep in mind that their use is not year-round. They use the facility for 10 weeks from mid-March to the end of May. And this period doesn't conflict with the most intensive use of the river by our neighbors during the high summer period when boating, water skiing, etc. are the premium activities there. We expect no change to the program size for Hopkins School. We know this because the school, like any high school similar to Oxford High School, offers the sport of rowing only in the spring period. Using Oxford High School as an example, it would be unworkable suddenly if the Oxford football coach were to decide to have football in the fall and the spring in any year, because he'd be making his fellow track and baseball coaches who coach the spring sports very angry, as many of the students play more than one sport. So we expect the Hopkins School to continue to use our facility as they currently do no change in size, whether or not, independent of whether or not our application here at P&Z is approved. I'd also like to have Joe Wren, whom I'm with here, if he can share his screen. I just want to have him show an image of our exterior siding, which we had questions on back in March. Is that possible, Chairman Sauter?
I'm wondering, because if you're showing well, no, it's the time to be adding additional, you could add additional. So yeah, you may go ahead and show that picture.
Okay.
So
I would like anything that you do display, I would like to see a copy also forwarded over to us so that we have that in the record as something that was displayed for the public as part of the public hearing.
of course, if you don't already have it in the file, we will certainly get you a copy of that. And on other platforms, the moderator has to give us permission to share our screen. Is that also true on Google Meet, or can we just go to present now, I assume?
Jess, do you have the do you have the ability to allow them to share it, or to offer them that option?
Come again? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get Desi on.
There
he is.
Okay, great. There is a do you have an option as administrator to allow Joe to share his screen? Are you able to delegate that or not?
Okay.
And if not, then we will find a different approach.
I don't know. I haven't had to do it before. Oh, wait a minute. He's sharing it. It's working.
There you go.
So, okay, so that worked. I guess I didn't need to grant it permission, so I'm
Right, permission.
change this one.
Nope, go to one more image. Okay. So thank you. That's great, Joe. That's an example of a maintenance-free metal siding, which looks like wood shingle. So the idea here to show is that this is something along the lines of what we're interested in doing for the proposed structure. Is there any questions on this before we turn back to the normal view?
Everyone can see the shingle siding, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And
Okay, here now you can go back to the original view.
I'm gonna go back to the building.
hide. I'll green hide and go back to normal.
Okay.
So get rid. Stop sharing, I guess. Yeah, there we are. Okay.
So they can still see the screen. I'm gonna stop sharing.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you. So just to sum up one portion, as we noted in March, our main intent is to hopefully build a structure which will shelter many of our current shells, which are stored outside, exposed to the weather. And we think that the proposed building would be an improvement in comparison to the two old FEMA compliant structures which are there currently. So just for a moment, I'd like to turn the table to Joe here, and we'd like to talk a little bit about some of the questions we received last time concerning the fact that we own the 3 distinct parcels, and we've got some ideas of how to come closer to the Planning and Zoning Commission's preference on that question. And there I introduce Joe Wren, consulting engineer.
I started to see the site plan. Can everyone see the site plan now?
Yes.
Okay. So at this zoom image, you can see the entire outline of the 3 parcels. And we have number 411 parcel here. Then in the center, we have the 407 parcel. And then on this side where the new building is proposed, that is 403 Roosevelt. So 3 distinct parcels now. Back in 1991-ish, the use was extended over all 3 parcels, correct? This particular use was extended to all 3 parcels. But what Stu was alluding to is, upon discussing this internally, after we got feedback back in March from your board, what the rowing club would like to propose to attempt to bring everything more into zoning compliance rather than less zoning compliance would be to eliminate the line between 411 and 407 completely. That would make both turn the 2 small non-conforming parcels into 1 non-conforming parcel, but also much larger, and eliminating that property line. And then in conjunction with that, where the new building is proposed, that is the same location, as you recall, the property line is 6.8 feet, as shown here, from the new building. What would be proposed is to do a simple lot line modification to move this black line, the current property line, to where this green gold line is shown, which is essentially the midpoint between the new building and the existing building. And it's about 15.8 feet from both buildings, from the closest points of both buildings. So that would make that 9 feet more conforming, increasing the 6.8 to 15.8. On this side, of course, it would reduce that distance, but it would make them equal. And since the side yard setback is 25 feet minimum, what we also added on here is to not only move that property line in the middle, but to also add 10-foot easements on both sides, that's shown in blue, on both sides of that property line, so that effectively each building gets not only the 15-foot property line buffer, but also an additional 10 feet of easement on the adjoining property. So effectively, there's more than 25 feet from each building to where any other building can be built or expanded to in the future. So we thought these 2 things together really make all the parcels and all the buildings essentially on the properties more conforming from a coverage perspective, from a lot area perspective, and from a setback perspective. So we felt that these changes would be welcomed by the board, and that would be our hope. Any questions related to this proposal?
Chairman Sauter, I have a question. This is John Kerwin.
Please go ahead, Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you. Mr. Wren, current setbacks are 25 feet, so you still wouldn't be in compliance. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. For the new building that's being proposed, we'd be much closer to compliance. And then, of course, the existing building, since we're putting it in the middle, that would be less compliance on that side. But that particular parcel, with the merger of 411 and 407, the lot area in the coverage would be more compliant to zoning as well.
Yep, I understood it the first time. Thank you. I don't think the concern, though, that we had so much was 411. I think it was the 2 buildings being owned separately, the properties. Would there be, would the New Haven Rowing Club be in agreement that if they were to sell that building to another entity, that the special exception for that property would cease, and that it wouldn't be able to be used as a facility for rowing?
I'll leave the response to that question to either John or Stu, since they represent the rowing club.
Right. And Mr. Kerwin, I'm an architect, not an attorney, so I'm not truly an expert in how that would go. I think I might defer to John. One moment, though, to say that one of our concerns here was to retain the ability to use one of first, to back up, it's not our intent that we would ever sell either parcel. But our main objective is to use our downstream, possibly in the event of bad times or some other case, et cetera. We would need possibly to seek a loan and use a property as collateral. And we found that the flood insurance on or to combine the whole thing as one makes and to flood insure it all makes it virtually impossible to do have a situation where we would borrow against our property. So if John is available and John Gorman can hear me.
Well, let me just jump in there for a minute, so I understand what you're saying before we get John on. So you're saying that the purpose to maintain the two buildings is just to secure a loan at some future point, because you don't think you would be able to secure a loan with the entire property.
Right, and in fact, we've done this very action in the past, using the fact that the downstream parcel was indeed separate as a way of carrying our debt. So it's something that our current board would like to be able to maintain that flexibility moving forward.
But
Of course,
but also then you concede they would also then maintain the ability to sell that parcel, or if things go wrong, the bank could always foreclose that parcel, and then we would have two non-conforming lots, basically, in separate ownership.
Right. I think one certain stipulation, of course, is that the special exception is based on non-commercial recreational use. So I don't think, just as a matter of law, that it would be possible for us to hypothetically sell the building and have there be any other use but the storage of rowing shells or canoes or whatever. So I think that, I guess, to speak to your question, I don't foresee that it could be developed a different way without returning and seeking some sort of zoning change in some future year.
Well, the special exception would be filed on the land records for each parcel, as required by state statute. So there'll have to be a special exception filed for all three lots. So I don't know. I haven't had the opportunity to research it, but I'm not so sure with your conclusion. But we can move along. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think, yeah, that's a great topic to pursue when we do move this to deliberations. Absolutely. Is there any other part of the presentation that we needed to hear about before we move to the questions of public? I want to make sure we're giving you every opportunity to give us all the information you have.
Mr. Chairman, yes, there is just a few more minutes, if you don't mind.
Please.
And just to remind the commission that all three parcels already have that special exception on them. I believe it was 1991.
2001? 1991 and 2001, all three parcels were given the special exception for non-commercial recreational use.
So 1991, two of the parcels that were owned at that time were given that special exception, and then it was expanded in 2001 to the third parcel. So all three have that special exception on them already. Just to make that clarification, and then Stu, did you have more?
So I'd just like to offer our member John Gorman, who's called in as well or videoed in. I'd like to offer him a chance to make a few comments regarding other questions that were asked in March.
So can anyone hear me?
We have you, John.
Okay. So the only things I want to review, because when we had that meeting, there was a lot of discussion about our status and our and our philanthropy, and the fact that we are a nonprofit, non-commercial recreation organization. just to review, and I think this might have been mentioned at the time, that in 2019, we donated $9,800 to the Habitat for Humanity. And also in 2019, we donated over $11,000 to the Lake Housatonic Authority. And what we represent in terms of that is what I think is our true focus of not only to promote rowing, but also to be a nonprofit. One of the things that was also discussed was the tax based on, and I think it was called an inspection tax, which for our size building, the storage unit would amount to about $7,500, and we were asking for that to be waived. I think there was a discussion about the fact that we looked at it as a hardship, and it's not a hardship. We just think that we don't qualify to be taxed under that particular town ordinance or whatever it's called, because we are not commercial, we're not residential, but we are nonprofit, and so I think we are exempt from that tax. So I would like the commission, I'd like the board to consider this as a reasonable request, in that we would like to be exempt from that particular inspection fee.
John, we're going to, that's going to be part of our deliberations as part of the overall application. So we're not going to go into any additional detail here about that, because you've kind of outlined exactly what your feelings are about that. But I don't think the deliberations right now any further is probably going to be the best place for it.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Joe Wren, just a matter of housekeeping. Just to remind the board, because it's been a few months, Inland Wetlands has already approved this project, and your engineer from Nafis and Young looked at it for wetlands and zoning and has no further comment as well.
And we have all of their records too. Thank you very much for that. Were there any other comments, from the applicants that you'd like to enter in?
Not at this time. I think certain members of the public, we have a few members joining in tonight who are both Oxford residents and members of the New Haven Rowing Club, but I believe the time for them to speak could be later in the evening.
Okay, that's actually going to be in just a moment or two, but I want to give the commission, based upon the presentation that has been given to us, does the commission have any additional questions that we haven't already covered between the March meeting and the questions that John posed tonight? Is there anything else you'd like to ask of the applicants directly at this time before we move to the public?
Commissioner, I have a quick question.
Sure. Who's that? Please.
I want. It says rowing storage.
Wait. Is that Jess?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see you. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm still trying to charge the computer here. It wouldn't let me log on before. I apologize. The question is going to be basically, it says for direct storage. Is this going to add more boats to the river?
Well, this is Stu Lathers here with Joe Wren. It's certainly it gives our club the ability to store more shells. Keep in mind that as our club is roughly 80 members, only perhaps 30, 35, sometimes this year 10 or 15 might row on any given day. So you can get the sense of that many of these shells don't get rowed very often, or are fragile such that they're rowed only for specific races, as some are so light as to be almost like kites, and the simple act of actually using them causes them to decay. But certain of our members really love those light boats because that's how they might win races. So as I've noted previously on the questions of use, we don't have a particular increase in terms of our club membership in mind. We've been quite stable over the last 20 years. And as I've noted, the Hopkins 10-week spring program is the same, regardless of this. So we'll have more boat storage. I don't foresee us having an intensification of the use. Many of these shelves are stored outside currently. And of course, we're using the two buildings which we have there, the non-FEMA compliant buildings, for the storage of regatta gear and equipment as well. So we see this generally as a way to just make our downstream site better, more conforming with FEMA regs, and just make the property more aesthetically pleasing.
Not hearing any other further questions. I'd like
Chairman Pat Cotrella here.
Oh, go ahead, Pat.
I just have 2 points that I'm curious about. So somebody can. One, do we have any jurisdiction at all over the usage of the river? Can anybody answer me that?
Pat, this is John Kerwin.
Hi, John.
We don't have jurisdiction over use, but under the special exception, we can consider obviously the effect that this would have on the river community because it's part of the neighborhood. So we can't tell them what wake speed they have to operate at, but or other matters that would apply to navigation on the water.
Okay.
But obviously, we have the authority under the special exception to consider the impact on the neighborhood. So, I was waiting to hear some kind of assurance, or at least something from the club, that they were willing to take the concerns of the people into consideration, and hopefully, make some kind of public statement that they would rely on in the future, that they're not going to interfere with, the powerboat season and those hours of operation. But I think it is proper. It's not a question of jurisdiction over the river. Obviously, it's jurisdiction over that community and the entrance to the river, the property that abuts the river. So,
Okay. John, can I address your comment, particularly about the use in respect of, this is John Gorman, I'm sorry, of that. And I think it's appropriate to respond to your comment. Again, if you look at when we use the river, we're on at 6 and 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're off by 8:30 before any motorboat gets out, any skiers get out. And if anyone's in jeopardy when there is a ski boat, it's us, because we are very fragile, very careful, easily waked and easily hit by a boat. So as far as the respect we pay, we have a lot of respect to skiers because they are just bigger and tougher and much more dangerous for us. So we stay away from them. We stay close to the shore, and we stay out of everyone's way. I can tell you that in the past 20 years, or at least in the last 10, there's never been one complaint about us that we know of to the Lake Housatonic Authority. We're good neighbors, we're respectful neighbors, and exactly why this all became such a big issue, I don't really know. It may be because, in mid-afternoon during the week, Yale has 10/8 out there. We can't control you. But we don't impact the people that have signed that petition. We don't run into them. We don't impact them. And I think you really have to take a look at and separate that out. And look at our history. Not only a history of being good residents of Oxford, but also good residents of the river.
Dave, I've got a question.
and I can say,
Hold on. Pat still had a second point that he wanted to bring up. He had one point that he made already. He still had the floor for a second point.
I'm good. My question has been answered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Pete, was that you then had the next question?
Pizza Brass.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah. What hours are you going to use that river at, did you say? Joe?
We use the river typically in the mornings during the week, and we're usually on the water between, well, at the break of day, 5:30, 6 o'clock, off and off by 6:30. Everybody goes to work. And on weekends, we row. Usually we start about 7 in the morning, and everyone's off by 8:30. Nothing's perfect. People row longer and they don't, just like any other organization. But we stay off the river when there are large boats because it inhibits our ability to row. So the reason we row early in the morning is because we can't row successfully when we're being waked by power boats. It's very simple.
The reason I asked you about the hours, because your statement of use has from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday to Saturday, March through November, and then 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, March through November. And then it says in the warm periods, small groups of seniors may use the facility between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. So that's why I'm asking about what hours you were using it, because your statement of use didn't go along with what you said.
Okay, I'm talking about the bulk of the membership.
Okay.
We do have a number of retired people that do run, but I don't think 3 or 4 people rowing on the river in the afternoon inhibits water skiing.
Well, isn't there a law that's saying a motorcraft can't approach a rowboat? When a rowboat's on the river, a motorboat can't approach it?
They have to stay within, they have to stay within 25 feet. I believe that's what the DOT requires, or the EPA. Sorry, the EPA. Within 25 feet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hello again. This is Stu Lathers again with Joe. And yes, so certainly the hours of use as read on our attachment to the statement of use are correct. And that the attempt there was to be fully transparent about our possible times. As a matter of fact, though, the 3 to 5 p.m. Monday, Friday is a very small use window for us. It may be no one, or on a month or 2 a year, it may be a small group of 3, 4, or 5 people. But the attempt there was to give a true, fully transparent view of the times of use.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave, if I can just ask Mr. Gorman to clarify something that he brought up. This is John Kerwin.
Go ahead.
Mr. Gorman, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Now, it's my understanding that, and this is in relation to Commissioner Zabras's question, obviously the motorboat has to stay 25 feet away, but also he has to yield to, the motorboat has to yield to the slower rowboat. Isn't that correct? Under the rules?
Yield in what regard? I'm sorry. You mean like if they're crossing the river or something of that nature?
So if a rower is going downstream and a motorboat is coming upstream, the motorboat has to maintain minimum wake speed and has to has to get out of the slower boat's way. Isn't that the rule with respect to navigation?
There's no requirement on Lake Housatonic for that. So if you're going down the river and someone else is coming up the river, as long as they're not under 25 feet, they can go as fast as they want.
Okay.
Or
and does your club have?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. And does your club have any kind of just a preference in a handbook or anything that says respect the other uses of the river? And it sounds like that's what you're telling us. Is that in writing anywhere that you could show people or submit to us that would allay some of the concerns about an increase of use during these peak hours? Because that seems to be the real issue that the public is having here.
Yeah, I understand, and I do think the public is getting us mixed up with Yale University, but I'm not here to demonize them. I'm here just to talk about us. We do have a manual about the club. We also have rules that we have to obey and how we row. So you always row down one side and row up the other. You never go to the center of the river. and things of that nature. I don't know if we specifically talk about water skiers, but water skiers are the danger of being out there on the river, because especially if they don't have spotters, and so then they're not really watching where they're going. And you know, we've not had any collisions. We've had some close encounters, so we're very careful to stay away from them. Fishing boats are fine. You know, everybody kind of mulls around and gets where they're supposed to go, but there is some evidence. One of the other things that I would like to bring up, and I think it was important, we talked about the use of the river. We have logs on when we go out and when we come in, and I don't know how far back we keep them, if it's more than the current season, but because of the issues of safety, when you go out, you sign out the time, who's with you, what boat you're rowing, and when you come back, you sign it back in, and that's done at a time. So if you leave at 6 a.m. and you come back at 7, you sign out at 6 and you come back at 7. And we have those logs, and I think that would alleviate anyone's concern about how often it's used other than the early morning and a little later on Saturday. I think we'd be very happy to present that information.
If I could interject here, I think we're going a little bit further off topic. You know, in terms of we're looking at the creation of the building of a storage building and some other questions regarding property line setbacks, et cetera. So I'd like to kind of go back to that part. So I think we've kind of talked about the other parts quite extensively. So if there isn't anything new that the commission wants to add or has questions for the applicants, I think this would be the time to turn to see if the public has anything that they'd like to say.
Dave,
Mr. Chairman, Pat Cocherella here.
Yes, Pat.
Just after we go out to the public, I'd like to come back to the commission. I do have another question, but it will be more appropriate after the public speaks.
Yes, I already planned to ask the commission one last time after the public
Thank
aspect.
Dave, it's Mary Lopresti. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes, Mary.
My question is this with regards to the building that's going to be used to house the rowing boats. Are these boats strictly for the rowing club, or is it going to be open to outside individuals that will be able to house the boats in that building as well?
Could I address that, Chairman?
Yes,
Stu Lathers. Joe?
Go ahead.
Ms. Presti, for someone to store a shell, a rowing shell or other type of boat in our facility presently, they would have to join the club to do so. So that's one of the things we would allow. So if someone wants to store a rowing shell or another boat such as that, the membership committee can take up their application, and we'd be delighted to have an extra member.
Okay, but that would be nothing that somebody would pay a rental fee for to store a boat.
I think the fee would be the membership, and there would be a small rack fee. So there would be a fee involved, but we would look to have that person be a member. To be given a key to our facility, we would give the key out to a member. But any such person is welcome to submit an application.
It's not open to the general public.
Okay.
Yes, but to speak to Joe's point, we don't allow members of the public who aren't members, just members off the street, to store shells. Because we're unoccupied, unattended most of the time, so the members have to have keys. And again, as John noted, there's an elaborate process about safety, water temperature, weather conditions, and all of those conditions are strict rules which our group has to follow. Everyone in the group has to follow those.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have a number of people that are here, and there's a chat button here in terms of being able to speak. So actually what I would say is this. So folks, on the right-hand side of your screen, at least the right-hand side of my screen, there is a chat button with a box down at the bottom. If you put your name in there, I will see that and call on you, so that way you can unmute yourself and be able to make your comments. I think that's going to be probably the most orderly way in a virtual environment to get through any public comments regarding the rowing club. And yeah, again, we're focused here on what's in front of us with the application, which is the building of a storage facility to bring in the shells and the boats that are currently being stored outside. I know there's a number of questions regarding setbacks and things like that, which the commission will be addressing. And as was alluded, we really don't have complete jurisdiction over the river, though a neighborhood is, the neighborhood is obviously a concern, and we want to be respectful of everybody to be able to take a minute or two and let us know their feelings. So the first name I have up here, I see Kevin Courtney. So if Kevin, you would like to unmute yourself, please give us your name and your address, and if you could, you may make some comments.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. My name is Kevin Courtney, and I'm an Oxford resident. I live at 3 Aspen Lane. My family and I have lived here in Oxford for a little over 5 years, and I've been a member at New Haven Rowing Club for that same time period. And I just wanted to say a few words, just speaking on behalf of the project, and just touching on Jesse's question earlier, and a lot of the conversation. I think in terms of I'm not an expert in zoning, but I do speak on behalf of the project because the sport of rowing is a very, it's an enjoyable, very low-key activity. There's been a lot of discussion about questions about power boats, and I've been in the sport of rowing for, I guess, about almost 40 years, and that which makes me kind of an old guy, but I've had a lot of chance to be in different bodies of water. And one of the things that really is most remarkable about the relationship on the Housatonic with the rowing community and with the power boating community is there really is a lot of respect. I think that everybody works hard to get along with each other. People wave at each other. They're very friendly. So I think in terms of the project, I think as Stu and Joe and John have spoken about it, I think it's an important project for the club to really facilitate the efforts that we have to make it a great place to recreationally to do the sport of rowing. But I think in terms of the community side of it, as an Oxford resident, I definitely feel like, the club does a good job or tries to do a good job of being a partner with the community. I've, over the, 5 years now that I've been on the river, never have I ever detected any sense of, lack of respect or people getting the level of support that they would want. And I know if they did ask the question, we would do that. But so I'll just close my remarks by saying, I'm strongly in support of the project and hope that the commission will approve it, and appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you for your input, Kevin. Next, speaker would like to say a few words is Kevin Manning. Kevin, you can unmute yourself and jump in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, my name is.
Record.
Yep, my name is Kevin Manning. I live at 17 Lake Drive in Oxford. I've been an Oxford resident for about 22 years and a property owner for about 22 years. Moved here in 1998. Unlike the other Kevin, I've actually only been rowing for a year. So I'll talk maybe for a few minutes about my experience with the club and the positive effect it's had on me. So I went to, about a year ago, went to an open house that's held, maybe John or Stu could comment, but I think it's held annually, sort of to promote rowing to the public. And following that, I joined the Learn to Row program there. And I will say that, a lot of the questions about safety and certainly the relationship with other boaters on the river, one of the most important things that I've learned sort of as a novice rower is that, you really, you've got to be fully aware and respectful of all the other boats. The rules that John talked about, where you stay on one side of the river going down, on the other side coming up, that's reinforced from day one and throughout. And I would also add that the comments about timing, in my experience, rowing in the last year, 95% of the time that I rowed has been between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning. And really, very, very little interaction during those time with any motorboats. Sometimes fishing boats, but usually not at that time in the morning, water skiers. It's been a very positive, positive experience with the club, albeit for a short time. And again, I can speak personally from experience that they're certainly open to, Oxford community members, learning more about the club and coming in, to an open house similar to the one that I came into and learning about rowing. So.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yep.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to comment this? And I'd also like to, keep comments focused directly on the application itself regarding the storage facility.
Can I comment? My name is Mike.
Mike, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Hi, I'm Michael Miswitz. I'm at 7 Roosevelt Drive, Seymour. I'm the guy that was at that first meeting, and I was trying to get more people to come to this. I thought you were going to table it until we could have people sitting in there and seeing you face to face. But anyway, so I appreciate the rowing club on the river for what they were. And when they started, they're telling us that they stayed with the membership they had. So after watching their video, they started with 50 members when they opened that clubhouse. That's what it said on their video. Now they're saying they're to 50 to 100 members. And as we go through this thing, I'm hearing people say we're down to 80 members now. But the members aren't the people I'm having an issue with as a resident here. I see the rowers out every morning. I have breakfast with my wife. We watch out there. Yes, they're out, up the one side, down the other. Not really. They're in groups, they're in clumps. But in the same token, nobody's perfect. I get that. So if they could just be a little quicker on that, because the right of way with the river, yeah, if there's a boat going along, if there's a rower, I try to avoid them. I try to stay 25 feet away from them. But if they're in a clump across the whole river, there's not much I can do about it. And that's one of the issues. They keep saying how they have very few, they have low members, but they don't really address the Hopkins School issue, which is, they have their name on the plan for the new building. The new building is going to hold more boats than the old building. Their boats are not being stored outside right now. I go by it all the time. They had one out there at the first meeting, and then they're all inside. So that's kind of a little foolishness going on. The Hopkins thing is they're saying that they're only till May. I ski till the end of the season. I'm fighting with Yale. I'm fighting with you guys. I know I can't do nothing with Yale. I know Yale from you guys. Hopkins is putting the chase boat out. They're blocking the river up there. You don't seem to address the fact that you're letting Hopkins use that. They're not members. I don't believe that they're members of the rowing club. They're people you're letting use it. So that's something that's the issue that I'm having, is that when Yale got bigger, they kicked the rowing club out of Yale because they needed it for their bigger program. You're going to let Hopkins start rowing here. You offered it to Oxford School. It's getting to the point where, I don't want another Yale upriver. And I know you're going to say that's not you, but you're getting bigger and bigger. Your membership has doubled in 20 years. You're taking away the septic system that was under those buildings, and you're saying that it's a storage building. If it's only going to be storage, I'd like that to be written into the deed that it's only storage. It could never have heat or plumbing in it, because I can see this thing getting turned off, like you're saying. If you get in dire straits, Hopkins School will gladly buy it from you because it's a made rowing facility. You're doing the whole waterfront over to make it into a rowing, you're doubling your facility. It was a collegiate club when it started. Now it's for high school kids. We've had a ton of accidents on the road, so we have more and more people going in there. The new building has provisions for more parking, which I think is going to be Hopkins to not go on your parking spot. So that's the issue that I have with this whole thing. I have no problem with the rowers that are out there. They're very respectful. They're nice guys. What you failed to mention is how many docks have you hit and how many fishing boats have you hit. When I did the petition, I ran into more people telling me how they got hit by the rowers while they're fishing. So that's all. I just kind of was hoping to get more people from the river to go there. I was going to target everybody in Oxford, but I just didn't have the time.
Well, appreciate you taking the time to provide your input.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else in the public that would like to comment on this, please refer to the chat window on the right-hand side where you can enter your name so that way we can call on you. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to comment regarding this rowing application? Hearing none, I'm going to go back to the commission one last time as part of the public hearing for any questions. I know Pat Coacharella has already indicated that he had a question, so I'm going to open the floor to Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is this. In front of us is an application for a storage building. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. We've had a lot of discussion about river usage and all this other stuff when it's just a storage building for these boats. I guess they're called boats. I don't know. So, you know, are we losing focus on what the application actually is and what we need to be deliberating on? I mean, I'm getting old. Maybe I'm missing something here.
We have covered basically, I think, a lot of things in detail. So that's why I'm trying to like to make sure to try and keep us a little bit on point regarding it. But I think that, you know, there's other things that make sense to bring in. But I think we've hit a lot of them. And I'm wondering if there's anything else new that the commission would like to bring up that has not been addressed as of yet.
Pat, that might have been more appropriate for the argument. You can bring it up again for deliberations.
Thank you, John.
I'm all set with it, Dave. Pizza Brass, I'm
Okay.
set.
All right. If there's no other further questions, we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing and then
Motion to close, Brett Olberys.
Pat
Pizza
Coacharella.
Brass, second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion is unanimous. The commission has 65 days from the close of the public hearing in which to render a decision on the application. Once the public hearing is closed, no further or new information will be accepted. The commission's final decision on the application will occur at a regularly scheduled meeting up to 65 days from the close of the public hearing. Moving on in the agenda, the next up is application Z20-034, 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. The owner, estate of Serge Mahaly Sr. The applicant is Matthew Mahaly, 111 Booth Hill Road, Trumbull, Connecticut. Again, the intents regarding the public hearing have already been read into the record, so I'm going to move to the correspondence section regarding this. I'd like to get some input from the commission on this. We have 8 letters from Oxford residents, all unanimous in their opposal to this particular project. Do we want to read all 8 letters into record, or letters into the record, or can we read names and addresses and so they're on the record and then they'll be on file? So just curious about input from the commission regarding that. We can go either way.
Hey, Dave, Brett Olberys, I have a question. As far as the letters that were received, was there a similar reason behind all 8 letters that you could summarize for us versus reading all 8 letters into the record?
They were all slightly varied.
Okay.
From what I've seen, that they all have a very similar theme, Brett.
Right. Not hearing any other opposition to it. What we'll do is we'll note the letters that were entered in. So, and the commission does have a copy of all of the of all of the correspondence. It'll be on file as part of the packet. Pat, I'm going to go through the 8 letters and just outline who they are, and then you can move into the other correspondence from Inlands, if that's okay with you.
Could you repeat that, Dave? It was kind of broken up.
I'm sorry. I am holding the letters, and I was going to read from the letters who the letters are from. name, address, and the opposition, and be able to then move forward and get those into the record just by reading that instead of reading the letters in their entirety.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I hate to burst your bubble of not reading these letters, but on our agenda, especially remotely, all the public was told that they could submit this correspondence if they couldn't be at the meeting. And I know that I told them personally that if they wrote that their correspondence would be read into the record because we were meeting remotely, and it would be easier that way.
Okay.
So I would just like the commission to consider that, that all these people did send it to me because that is how it's stated on the agenda, that they can send the correspondence in written rather than be here and have to talk remotely online at the meeting. So I just would like the commission to know that that is what I told the neighbors that contacted me.
If that was communicated, then I'm just going to go ahead and read the letters in, so that way it's fully voiced through. Pat, I'm going to take care of the letters and go through them right now. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. If you need me to pick up at some point, let me know.
Okay. First letter is from Thomas F. Collins, 286 Chestnut Tree Hill Road, Oxford, Connecticut. To whom it may concern, my wife Lorene and I are the owners of the property at 286 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. We noted with some interest the posting of the proposed plan to subdivide the Mahaly property at 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. While I have no background in any type of engineering, I would like to simply raise a concern regarding the southwest corner of proposed Lot 4, which borders our property. The area includes a fairly steep slope, which runs from our property into the proposed Lot 4. I do not know if the area noted in proposed Lot 4 designated as a watercourse could be developed, but it appears to me that any new owner of a proposed Lot 4 could make the use of the southwest corner of the property, possibly in a manner that would destabilize the slope at the rear of our property. I would ask the commission to ensure in their current and future deliberations regarding activity on this parcel of land that the stability of the slopes on both of our property and the proposed new Lot 4 be maintained. Thank you for your consideration. Next letter is from, and I apologize if I pronounce this incorrectly, Rui Dantas at 288 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. Dear Oxford Planning and Zoning, I am reaching out to you today as a concerned member of the community. As recently as it has been brought to my attention that land behind and nearby my home are being assessed for approval of subdivisions for the purpose of constructing multiple single-family homes. When my family moved to Oxford 5 years ago, we moved to this town specifically for the rural atmosphere, preservation of the environment, and great schooling system. Within these 5 years, the town of Oxford has significantly reduced the first two reasons by allowing a power plant to be built, as well as increasing developments within Oxford Road. For those reasons, I ask that you consider your neighbors' thoughts, opinions, and those who will be directly impacted when deciding on this matter. I ask that you not approve this request and not allow Oxford to further destroy its environmental preservation. Should you have any further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me directly at this email address or at my phone number. I thank you for taking the time to read this email. Next letter is from Robert and Robbie Costigan at 300 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. Dear Zoning Commission, my wife Robbie grew up in Oxford, and when we got married, we were very excited to move to Chestnut Tree Hill Road. We have been here almost 30 years now. The rural feel here is second to none. The proposed subdivision, if approved, would mean we would have a house next to us and one directly behind us. We are absolutely opposed to this proposed subdivision because it will ruin the rural character of our neighborhood. The tree farm is between our home and the historical house would be replaced with the new house. The historical barn would also have a new house near it. The new house proposed behind our property would be off Old Litchfield Turnpike, abutting the state forest, where many people park their cars. The area there will become more congested. The dirt road would have to be improved to allow safe passage of vehicles. For these reasons, we would like you all to consider voting against this proposed subdivision. We have always appreciated living here. Oxford is a special place to live. Please don't take that away from us. Next is from David and Georgianne Earhart. To whom it may concern, we were recently made aware of a proposed development across the street from our home. Please accept this letter as our plea not to consider this plan. We are in our retirement years and have chosen this area because our neighborhood is so peaceful and quiet. More foot and car traffic in newly constructed homes would take that away from us. would take away from this. To be honest, with the world as it is, the uncertainty of who will be purchasing these homes is a concern too. We thank you for your time and consideration. From Timothy and Janine Blue, to whom it may concern. Timothy and Janine Blue at 289 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. To whom it may concern, this letter is in response to the proposed plan of building homes at the lot of Chestnut Tree Hill Road. We purchased our home 1 year ago. The draw for us to this neighborhood was the large lots, the beautiful older homes, and peace and quiet. We feel adding more houses and cars to this neighborhood, a matter of yards from our home, will take away from the tranquility and charm we have at this time. Thank you for considering our viewpoint. From Dave Bradley, of 289 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. I've been a resident on Chestnut Tree Hill Road since 1961. I grew up at 289 Chestnut Tree Hill Road, which is a historical homestead with my parents and 3 brothers. It was a great place to grow up, always quiet and rural. In 1989, my wife and I built a house on some of my parents' property at 285 Chestnut Tree Hill Road and have been there ever since. We raised our 2 children here. I'm writing to express myself and my wife's opposition to having new houses built in our neighborhood. As it stands, the natural landscape, tree farm, and historic homes that grace the area are treasured by our community. I feel it would be a detriment to the neighborhood and environment to allow construction and, frankly, clutter this beautiful part of Oxford. I appreciate your time and hope you take my comments into consideration. Next is Linda Adamatis. To the Planning and Zoning Commission, I am a resident of 307 Chestnut Tree Hill Road in Oxford. I am writing in opposition to the proposed subdivision at 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. I believe the historic significance of the house and barn and the agricultural roots of the property should be preserved. My father moved into that house at the age of 3 in 1918. During the Great Depression in 1929, at the age of 14, he was forced to get full-time work in order to save the family farm. I believe the beauty and natural resources of the property should remain intact. While I recognize the current owner's right to sell his property, I strongly oppose carving it up. The owner has no ties to Oxford and likely has no concern for the town or its history. In my opinion, if he made a concentrated effort to market the entire property to the wealth in the New York City metro area, he would be successful. During this COVID-19 crisis, many city dwellers are desperately seeking a country oasis. Selling this property intact would be in Oxford's best interest. From Anne Marie Adamatis, co-owner of 307 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. I'm Anne Marie Adamatis, co-owner of 307 Chestnut Tree Hill Road, which is where I grew up. My father grew up at 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. I would like to express my opposition to the proposed subdivision of 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. On viewing the proposal, it appears that Lot 1 and Lot 2 divide the historic barn from the main house. I strongly object to that. Historically, homesteads with their outbuildings are one parcel. This homestead was included in Early Houses of Oxford, a book printed by the Oxford Historical Society in 1976. I would also like to question the access of lots 3 and 4. Old Litchfield Turnpike is a dirt road. What will it cost us, the taxpayers, in upgrades and maintenance for this project? I believe that is something to be considered, particularly now when we are in such economically uncertain times. I thank you for your consideration. And that takes care of the correspondence that was received locally. Pat, I think we have a couple of letters from inland wetlands. If you want to grab those, I think that covers the correspondence that we have. You have those handy? I'm sorry, not Pete, Pat.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, from the Conservation Commission Inland Wetlands Agency to the Chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of Oxford, Oxford, Connecticut, referencing 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road. Dear Chairperson and Commissioners, after a full review of the subdivision layout for 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road, the Commission makes this recommendation to the Zoning Board. The lot layout does not have any location for open space. The Commission agrees with this. We do not believe in taking of land at this location has any great benefit. The state of Connecticut has open forest land across Old Litchfield Road Oxford zoning does allow for receiving monetary funds in lieu of land. The Conservation Commission is unanimous in favor of this. We do not recommend a waiver of open space donation. As you may know, these funds are used to purchase larger parcels of land for open space. These funds are critical to helping add open space land. These purchases help keep taxes low by preventing other residential development. Purchasing open space helps retain Oxford's rural character. Thank you in advance. Supercell Gibson, Chairman of Conservation Commission. I also have from the Conservation Commission Inland Wetlands Agency to the Chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of Oxford, Connecticut, referencing 312 Chestnut Tree Hill Road subdivision. Dear Chairperson, as you may know, the Inland Wetlands Commission wears two hats. The second is the Conservation Commission. Our primary directive by state mandate is to advise the Zoning Commission on decisions about development and subdividing. Most importantly, open space acquisition and fees in lieu of. I thank you in advance. Sue Purcell Gibbons, Chairman of Conservation Commission. I have one from Navis and Young Engineers. Navis and Young Engineering Incorporated is in receipt of plans for a 4-lot subdivision on the above referenced site. We offer the following. Please provide area calculations for each lot, including wetlands areas and steep slope areas. 2, please identify first floor elevations for each unit. 3, please provide a grass-lined swale at the bottom of lots 3 and 4 with stone check dams. Grade the swale to accept runoff from Old Litchfield Turnpike and said lots and discharge the swale to the pond. 4, please provide site distances data for the driveways for lot 1 and 2. 5, the contours for the Old Litchfield Turnpike area grade onto the state of Connecticut land. Has the permission been secured to grade on state property? 6, please clarify proposed improvements to Old Litchfield Turnpike, i.e. paving, processed stone curbing, etc. Millings for pavement do not meet the Town of Oxford zoning regulations. 20-foot road width does not meet the Town of Oxford zoning regulations. 7, please indicate limit of disturbance for each lot. 8, please identify locations of silt fencing. 9, please clarify grading in septic system areas. 10, please provide the sizing calculations for roof leader infiltrators. 11, please provide driveway details, swale details, check dam details, and riprap details. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Signed, James Gallagher, PE.
Okay.
Well, that's all I have.
Okay. Are the applicants online with us right now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and who is this?
Oh, wait a minute.
This is Matthew Mihaly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on one moment. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I do have one more. It was stuck to the back here. It's from Bombero and Associates Professional Land Surveying and Engineering. Dear Commission, on behalf of the property owner, we are requesting a waiver of the open space requirements. The property is located adjacent to the Naugatuck State Forest, formerly property of Bridgeport Hydraulic Company. This allows each divided lot access to the many acres of open space offered by the state forest, making the typical release of land from this owners inconsequential to the overall utility of the properties. And it's signed Paul J. Bomberos. That's it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay, to the applicant, since we only see a part of a phone number, if you could identify yourself, name, address, and if you have a brief presentation to provide to the commission.
Matthew Mihaly, 111 Booth Hill Road, Trumbull, Connecticut. I didn't have a presentation. I don't know if one thing I will state about the house and the barn is my father purchased that property from the Adamitis in 1987 and spent substantial sums of money restoring it to as near original shape as he could. So I'd like you to take into consideration what he did If he didn't, I don't know what would have happened with that historic barn and house. I appreciate the neighbors' comments, and we're just trying to develop it as responsibly as possible. That's all I have to say.
Okay, at that point then, I'd like to follow a similar outline as before. I'm going to let the commission members ask whatever questions they'd like to be able to ask of you regarding this application. I'm going to open it up to the public for any comments after that, and then wrap up with the commission members again for any follow-up questions, and we will take it from there. So I'll leave it up to the commission now for any questions that you might have for Matthew.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Sauter.
I have a question.
I'm not sure who the first. I think Pete I heard first. I'm going to go recognize Pete.
All right, Mr. Mahaley, as far as this historical barn goes and this house goes, if I'm not mistaken, they were plaqued, and you've been getting your father, whoever owned it prior, been getting a discount on the taxes because it was historical. And I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that they can't be ripped down now once they've been plaqued or subdivided, or the property. That's what we're gonna have to check in on.
I have no knowledge of them being plaqued or being historical monument markers. I have no knowledge, and I have not been given any discount on taxes by any means.
Okay, okay.
Commissioner Kerwin, I think you were up next.
Thank you, Commissioner Sauter, or Chairman Sauter. Mr. Mahaley, this is John Kerwin, the Vice Chairman. Have you responded to Nafis Young's March 19th letter in any way? That was just read into
no, sir. I just received that today. So my engineer has not had an opportunity to speak with them and make any changes to the maps or anything with regards to their recommendation.
Okay, so you haven't discussed making improvements to Old Litchfield Road or any of that, the necessity as addressed in lines?
Well, I mean, other than what's in the plan as far as the proposed improvements, we haven't discussed it with the engineer. Again, we just received that today. I guess that letter kind of got lost in the shuffle with COVID and everything like that. So we haven't had the opportunity to deal with it before the meeting. I apologize.
Okay, that's going to require us, obviously, we're going to need some kind of response. And this is addressed directly to the commission, specifically the chairman. We're going to need some response back from his engineer. There's some pretty serious points that are brought up about the applicability of the regulations to this particular subdivision. I just wanted to make a general comment to the letters that were mailed in to the commission. And I sympathize very much with the people who mailed those letters in. And I can imagine what it feels like to think that you're going to lose the rural character of your property with the subdivision. Unfortunately, on behalf of the commissioner, at least on myself, as much as we may be for or against it, we can't deny a subdivision that complies with the regulations. That being said, obviously, I preface those comments by saying Mr. Galligan has brought up some pretty significant points that need to be addressed before we can even get this close to being approved. One other point that I'd like to make, and I'd like the commission to consider seriously, is the admonition from the inland wetlands with respect to a payment of open space donation. Mr. Mahaley, I know we talked about it before. I was having difficulty the last meeting addressing that issue. The rules that are adopted by state statute, and it's 825, provides for a 10% donation to this town's open space fund based upon the fair market value of the undeveloped land, or the land in the condition that it is currently. Would you be willing to do that if the commission makes it a condition of approval?
I would, depending on, I'd like to see what the road cost will be and who's going to share that, if at all. So, you know, I appreciate what the open space fee does. You know, not knowing exactly what the amount is too, or, you know, I prefaced my agreement on the amount and what we come to terms to on the road improvement that the engineer has questioned.
And forgive my use of the term, agree. It would probably, if it was approved by the commission, it would be a condition of approval. So, you know, it wouldn't be so much agreement, but it's 10%. And then what it does is it's divided by the number of lots. So each time that you sell a lot, you would pay, in this position, there's 4 lots, 1/4 of that 10% would be donated each time you sell it. And that's pursuant to 825 of the general statutes and also Article 8 of our subdivision regulations. The commission wants to check those out. And specifically, I believe it's Article 8, Section 2 adopts General Statute Section 825 for that calculation of 10%. Also, we would have to hire an appraisal or an appraiser to get that fair market value, unless the applicant has one that the commission would be in agreement with. So that's something we can take up in the future.
Mr. Curran, may I ask a question of you?
Just let me finish up, and then I don't know, that's not really appropriate, but also with respect to the road, usually the cost would be borne by the applicant as to any requirements for improvements to roads to give access to your property. So that's just something else to consider. But those are all my comments.
Okay, so to answer, so then the only thing that I would like to point out, if you're saying that the road improvements is solely borne by me, then one of the letters addressed the cost of road improvements, and so I don't know which is correct. If that public comment was incorrect. The question I was going to ask, but if you say I can't ask a question, I'll just make a statement. That Section 2 of your subdivision of Article 8 of the subdivision regulations say 10% of the fair market value of the total value of raw subdivision land. So I'm presuming raw subdivision land means undivided land value. But that's what I wanted to clarify. And if it can't be answered by the commission, then fine. I guess we'll find that out.
Yeah, I can talk about that. This is a re-subdivision, so it's the property in the condition before the subdivision. And that's Article General Statutes 8- I think it's 13, the definitions for subdivisions and re-subdivisions. So this is a re-subdivision, not a subdivision. But that's something we can also look into.
All set, Commissioner Carmen?
Those are all my comments.
Great, thank you. Any other members of the commission have any questions at this time for the applicant? All right, hearing none, I'm going to ask if the public has any questions. And for those that have joined or that would like to ask any questions, please look at the right-hand side of your view, which gives you the ability to set up a chat. There's a chat box where you can just put your name on it, and that way we can call on you to be able to add your comments to it. So at this time, if you move to the right-hand side of the screen, click chat, there'll be a box that pops up where you can send a message and put your name in there. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this application? Let's one more time. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this application at this time? I see Tanya Carver has popped up. So Tanya, if you'd like to name, address, and be able to make any comments.
Yes, this is Tanya Carver, 10 Moose Hill Road. Let's see, I just would request, I presume that this public hearing will continue on since we do not have the answers from Nathanson Young. I just have a couple of questions in regards to, and a comment to, I know this is a re-subdivision, but also with the re-subdivision, the commission does have full purview to ensure, some of the subdivision regulations from Article 1, Section 1, as to 1, to provide for adequate light, air, and privacy for the subdivision. I am not seeing any buffers in regards to the existing property and any buffers that are assigned on the map to ensure that for example, the Costigan property, they will have a home below them, but I don't see any buffers in regards to them seeing their bedroom per se, right? You're above and you want to make sure you're not looking to below. I do believe that in regards to the historical side, there is something to review, to look at, because it is have a plaque, and our plan of conservation does say that we want to keep those historical residences as part of enhances the community in itself. The property itself, I grew up in the area, and it does go into the town's water supply. And I didn't see anything in regards to the aquifer, and I'm wondering if maybe our aquifer representative should take a look at it. There is one definition in the aquifer guidelines that says a level A mapping, which defines the land area contributing groundwater to the public water supply well field. I don't know if this subdivision would be part of that. So I'm just bringing that to the commission's attention. And also, there isn't any Pomperaug Health District report. If the lots are to be served by a septic system, or the communication from the Pomperaug Health District shall be submitted stating which lots require standard septic systems and which lots require professional design systems for this particular application. The lot number 4, it's the acreage, it's tight. It looks pretty tight as to 2.000, and there is an entire aquifer, I see, a wetland boundary. So it looks like there's a large amount of water that comes in from lots 3. It starts on lots 2, 3, but into lot 4, it looks like it divides the entire lot. And it says that we have to have 1.5 contiguous dry acres of land, but such land shall be of such shape that a square of 175 feet on each side will fit onto that lot. So I can't tell if 175 feet of dry contiguous land, would fit in that little space. Just for the commission to look at, because there is a lot of water coming in from there. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the input, Tanya. Most appreciate it. Next up is Janine Blue. If you have any comments regarding this particular application, you can unmute yourself. Janine? Okay, we're going to move on. Next up is going to be Robert Costigan. Rob, you have the floor if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Robbie Costigan.
Hi, Robbie. Name and also your address, please.
300 Chestnut Tree Hill Road.
Thank you.
I disagree with Mr. Mahaley's comment that it's not a plaqued house. I know that when we moved in, there was a plaque on the house with a date. And I've driven down the street many times and I've seen the plaque, so I'm not sure why he says it's not a historical site. Maybe he took the plaque off, I'm not sure, but as far as I'm concerned, it is a historical site. And the comment that Tanya brought up about a buffer between the two houses, if there was a house to go up next to us, we would be on the high side. and the house going in would be down below us. So that is something that I would like the commission to consider if they approve this.
Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate the input. Next up is Greg Kasuba.
Ask if they can hear you. Hello, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Is this Greg?
Yes, this is Greg Kashuba.
And please state your address for the record.
Yes, I'm at 313 Chestnut Tree Hill Road.
Very good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to state there, I've been here for now 13 years when I purchased a home back in 2007. And just stating that currently it looks like the home that's residing there is actually being rented there. Very nice people actually renting the place there. But it seems only as recently that there's been a lot of activity around the house there where there's been in a cleanup mode. It seems like this particular property was in dire straits for many years. There was an old tree farm there, thus the name of Father Luke's there, which I did purchase a tree way back when. And but in the meantime, it just seems like it's been just left abandoned. There was 2 vehicles that were removed that were abandoned there for many years when I was just waiting with my kids for the bus to come across, and they were just pulled out recently. So there's just up to this recent point, there's been a lot of activity, but prior to that, not very much at all. And also just very curious about the Litchfield Turnpike situation there, where again, I've been on that dirt road there with my dog, and that there where obviously it comes out to Chestnut Tree and then it goes to continues on. But again, just would like to see it just remain as is, and just very curious to see just what's going to continue on here forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the input. I'll ask one more time because she had listed she wanted to say something. Janine Blue, are you available to speak for a moment? Okay. Is there any other member? I'm sorry, Janine?
Hi. Sorry.
Hi, go ahead. You have the,
I'm
could you
new
state your name and
to
address
this.
for the
I'm
record?
Janine Blue. I'm on 289 Chestnut Tree Hill Road, live right across the street from where this subdivision is being discussed. Is there already people working on that? Because I've seen, pickup truck and clearing of trees and stuff like that. Is there already like one level of this that they've already begun?
I can't really comment on any activity. I'm looking at the application here in front of us, but we'll take whatever public input you have regarding this back. The commission will consider.
Oh, no, I was just wondering, is this like a preliminary thing where, they've gotten acceptance to start working on it, or is it just they're potzing around?
This is a public hearing for an application that was presented to planning and zoning. No acceptances have been provided or anything like that, and this is the opportunity for the public to comment on it.
Okay, this is all new to me, so I appreciate your time.
No problem at all. I appreciate your input, taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that has any comments regarding this application at this time? Okay. Hearing none, does the commission at this time have any other comments for the applicant? Okay. Hearing none. I know we do have some open-ended items in front of us, so unless the commission feels differently, I think this would be the time if we have a motion to recess this and be able to address it at another date.
Chairman Sauter?
Yes.
John Irwin here. I don't know if we want to ask Mr. Mahaley if he would grant us a continuance. He's going to have to get his engineer to review all that information, and he said he hadn't seen the March 13th letter from Mr. Galligan. So, now is his time to respond to those questions.
Exactly, which is why I was suggesting a recess if that's what the commission agreed with.
Yeah, and I don't know if Mr. Mahaly would agree to, obviously he's going to need some time, a 30-day extension, or I'll let him make the suggestion because he's going to have to get his engineer to review that information.
I prefer to, I think that the next meeting, you meet every 2 weeks, right? It's twice a month. I mean, I think by the next meeting, you should have answers to those questions. That's sufficient time, as far as I know.
Okay. And Mr. Sauter, I'd like to thank Ms. Carver for her input. That was good to hear from a past member. If we could maybe have, I can't really read the sediment control map. That's the second map that was submitted by Engineer Cordero. But if we could have Mr. Galligan address some of Ms. Carver's concerns regarding the lot lines with respect to the inland or the wetlands, just to make sure that that's in compliance. I know that there is a sediment and erosion control that has some of the information, but I just can't read it. So it might be important to let Mr. Galligan hear some of Ms. Carver's concerns and make sure that they were addressed.
I think that makes sense. So do we have a motion to recess this public hearing till our next regularly scheduled meeting date?
So be it.
Pete Sabras made the motion.
Yes, sir.
Second?
Second, Pat Cotrella.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on with the agenda. New public hearings, we have none. Future public hearings, we have none. And then into the regular meeting business. Pat and Jess, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
I don't have any amendments.
Okay, great, thank you.
None that I am aware of.
Wonderful, thanks. Addressing the audience of citizens. Does anybody in the audience of citizens have any comments they'd like to make about items that are not listed on the agenda? Again, this is for items that are not listed on the agenda. Does any members of the public have any comments they'd like to make about items that are not listed on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Correspondence, is there any new correspondence aside from what we've already read in that needs to be added?
Nope. Nope.
Nope. Okay. Next up is going to be old business matters upon which a public hearing was held. Z20-031, 10 Fox Hollow Road, also known as Lot 5, Fox Hollow Road. Owner is York Machinery South, 160 Warren Avenue, Westbrook, Maine. The applicant is Chadwick Barros, and this is for 10 Fox Hollow Road, a special exception, change of use. We do have a letter that should be read into the public record. That's from Kevin Condon, the town attorney. Here. And actually, before we start this, I just want to ask one question here to Jess Schremer. Jess, I know you weren't at this at this last meeting. Were you able to get up to date on the records, be able to listen to the tapes and the recording of the meeting? Jess?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Hey,
Yeah, now I can hear you.
so this particular part with the Chadwick boss, I did not. I was not able to reach this. I only heard everything from the meeting prior on this particular issue.
Jess, would you be okay recusing yourself from the deliberations on this one?
Sure.
Thank you very much. I'm going
Thanks,
to
Dave.
seat Josh Dykstra for this particular agenda item only. For the deliberations, since I know Josh has been here for all the meetings and is caught up on everything. So thank you to both of you. Pat, we have two letters actually here that we have to get read in. I'm gonna. Would you like to read them both, or you want me to take one?
Bring them up now. If you give me a moment, please.
Take your time.
Dave, you want me to read them? It's John Kerwin.
Actually, if you have it in front of you, yeah, why don't you go ahead? If you want to start with Kevin's letter, and then you have the other one as well. Go for it.
We can share the load.
Okay, thank you.
If that's okay with Pat.
That's fine, John. Thank you.
All right. Starting first, this is a letter from law offices of Condon and Sabat, June 4th, 2020, addressed to David Sauter, Santer Chairman, Oxford Planning and Zoning, regarding 10 Fox Hollow Road, Chadwick Barrows Incorporated, road damage bond. Dear Chairman Sauter, regarding the above captioned, I have been asked to render my opinion as to the legitimacy of the requirement of a road repair bond to be posted by property owner York Machinery South Incorporated. It is my understanding York Machinery South Incorporated, doing business as Chadwick Barrows, has applied for a change of use from the contractor's yard to a retail heavy equipment sales, storage, and rental. The applicant's statement of use describes a company that has been in business for 99 years and has been providing municipalities and general contractors in New England with heavy equipment along with service and parts. The proposed site will house 30 pieces of equipment, including excavators, skid steers, wheel loaders, rock crushers, and screens. There will be 5 full-time employees and 1 part-time at this Oxford location. The company is expanding its Northeast operations and is excited that the Oxford location is a perfect fit. In reviewing the minutes of the public hearing, there is some discussion by commission members over the concern of possible damage to the Fox Hollow Road, presumably caused by trafficking of the on-site heavy equipment. While the concern is well-intentioned, it is not backed up by any specific evidence, testimony, or factual basis. The concern of future damage to the road is based on pure speculation. This is an industrial zone that has seen the use of heavy equipment by property owners over the last decade. I have conferred with the town engineer, Jim Galligan, and together we have not identified another instance where an individual property owner has been required to put a road repair bond in place on the anticipation of damage. To do so in this instance would be contrary to the historical action of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the town of Oxford. It is the present administration's intent to foster economic development in the town and to accommodate business owners for the betterment of all parties. The administration is satisfied that in the event particular damage is caused to town property, legal recourse exists to hold the damaging party responsible. Therefore, given the nature of this zone, the everyday equipment traffic on this road, and absent any evidence this property owner would cause damage to the town road, a requirement of a road damage bond is not warranted. Thank you for your attention. Very truly yours, Kevin W. Condon Town Council. All right, the next letter is from John Kerwin, Vice Chair, dated June 12, 2020, addressed to Dave Sauter, Chairman, regarding 10 Fox Hollow Road, Chadwick Barrows Incorporated, inclusion of a road damage bond. Dear Chairman Santersik, that should be Sauter. I am writing in response to Attorney Condon's recent correspondence regarding the applicability of a road damage bond as a condition of approval for the above referenced site plan application for a special use permit. Whereas I hold Attorney Condon's opinion on legal matters in the highest regard, I find myself in the unusual position of disagreeing with his conclusion that 1, there is no evidence in the record to support a road repair or road damage bond, and 2, that the historical action of the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission does not support this action. With regard to the first point, I would kindly ask the commission to look no further than the record from its last meeting when reviewing application Z20-033, 1R Pheasant Run Road. Town engineer Galligan recommended the consideration of a open quote road repair, close quote bond to cover the town for any damages caused to the road by the heavy dump trucks leaving the excavation site. Parenthetically, Mr. Galligan's letter is attached for the commission's convenience. Please see item 6, close parens. I would respectfully point out that in the current application, the commission has before it the same quantum of evidence to support the conclusion that repeated trips by heavy vehicles over the same route will cause damage to the road surface. In fact, during the public hearing, there was testimony and evidence demonstrating that there will be large excavators being transported back and forth on this roadway at regular intervals. One need look no further than the Oxford zoning regulations to support the conclusion that the transportation of heavy equipment continuously over a single route may cause damage to that road surface. I submit that it is primarily for this reason that the regulations require a special exception for heavy equipment sales and storage under Article 9, Section 9.3.16. Obviously, the primary purpose of a special exception for this type of use allows the commission to consider such matters as the potential damage to town roadways caused by this activity, and thus take appropriate steps to mitigate that damage. With regard to council's second point, namely that there is no historical basis to support the application of a road bond in this instance, again, I must reiterate that this imposition of a road damage bond is quite typical. As I mentioned above, the imposition of a road damage bond was suggested by Town Engineer Galligan on the previous application before the commission. There was considerable testimony during that hearing regarding the common procedures for imposing and implementing a open quotes road damage bond, close quotation. Secondly, assuming for argument that the commission had never required a bond in this type of scenario, the commission would not be obligated to follow its decisions. As a statutorily created body, parenthetically see General Statutes Section 8-1 et sec, the commission has no authority to make its own rules. Its decision-making authority is controlled strictly by statute and regulation, not prior precedent of the commission. The authority for the imposition of bonds for the satisfaction of any financial guarantee required as a condition of any application or site plan for the regulated use of land is specifically authorized by General Statutes Section 8-3 subsection G, et sec. The commission would be obligated to disregard any of its prior decisions if they deviate from the requirements of the state law or regulation. The fact that the application for Z20-033 1R Pheasant Road is for an excavation and the instant application is for a special exception does not change the fact that both applications would result in significant truck travel over town roads, risking damage to those roads. In both instances, it is this incidental use and not the characterization of the application that justifies the consideration of a road damage bond. I fully appreciate that the current administration's intent is to foster economic development. Nonetheless, this application may present a financial risk to the taxpayers of the town of Oxford in the form of road damage caused by individual and foreseeable heavy equipment transportation. The commission therefore must decide whether it is more important to promote economic investment at the risk of possible expense to the taxpayers. Every application requires balancing benefits versus risks. Fostering economic development is an appropriate and persuasive reason to not require a road repair bond in this instance, and I do not fault or criticize the administration's position on this matter. I would only urge the commission, if they are inclined to follow the administration's position, simply to own the decision and not resort to any extramodal arguments, as I've described them above, that could impede the commission's authority in the future. Whereas the commission cannot make its own rules, it must treat every application consistently. And to say that the commission is prohibited from an action in one instant and not in another without the requisite justification is not an appropriate, open quote, precedent to set, close quote. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, John Kerwin. I'll leave that letter, which has already been in the record, on another matter. That's from Nathan Young, specifically point 6, where Mr. Galligan is saying that the commission should consider placement of surety protection against damage to the town roads by this operation. I won't bother to read the entire letter into the record, but that was the point I was making and the reference in that prior letter. Pat, I should have let you read that last one. That was a mouthful.
Get a drink of water.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay.
That guy's kind of long-winded, that Kerwin guy.
Yeah, he sure is.
All right. So, so to the commission itself, we've gotten feedback and input from our town attorney, and also specific feedback from John. regarding his comments regarding that. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to weigh in regarding this? Regarding this
Hey,
topic?
Dave.
Just go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, Brett Olbrys, Commissioner. To Commissioner Kerwin, I just have a quick question. I'm trying to reconcile where the town attorney has said he conferred with Jim Galligan, and they didn't identify another instance with this road repair bond, but then you cited, your letter where it was required. I'm trying to understand where the discrepancy is.
Yeah, I was confused myself. I didn't write the letter. You guys remember that from the last one. I think maybe there was a miscommunication. And I have the highest regard for Attorney Condon, and I'm not as familiar with Mr. Galligan, but I have tremendous regard for him as well. But as you can see in point 6 of Mr. Galligan's letter, he's asking for surety protection, which is another way of saying a bond for damage to town roads by this operation. You will recall also in the response back from, and I'm going to put Chow, the engineer that represents the applicant in 1R Fox Hollow, they had discussed that road repair bond and Chow agreed to it. So we have done it in the past. That was my point. I think it might have been a miscommunication. That's all. But the letter does talk about surety for damage to the roads. It just goes to my point, and I think that the miscommunication could be on. It is somewhat of a unique circumstance. I wasn't recommending a bond for, it was a 1-year limited bond, which is not as typical. The excavation in this case has a limited time period. And just to avoid any concerns with, having that financial obligation continue, I had requested the shorter period. Maybe that wasn't communicated back, and that was the cause of the miscommunication. But yeah, I couldn't reconcile it either. We did discuss it at the last meeting. In fact, we talked about a road repair bond quite considerably.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Pat, go ahead.
I'm looking at this and, I think a factor to consider is with the excavation operations where it said that we had road repair bonds in place. How many trucks per day versus how many trucks per day are going to come and go from this operation? That might be a deciding factor. If there's a high number of trucks coming in and out every day from this site, then maybe a road repair bond is applicable. But if it's only, 1 or 2 trucks a day, compared to the how many, were they talking about 10 or 12 trucks a day from the other site? It's kind of a whole different thing. And that's what I'm thinking. As far as the legal aspect of it is, I don't know. I defer to others on that because I am not an attorney. But, I just seeing that the difference is in maybe an intensity of use, I guess is the phrase. That's all.
And Pat, I think that's
Actually, John, because you already had me to come, I'd like to go to Pete as well, and then we'll circle back. Thank you.
The trouble I think we got here is comparing apples to oranges. These trucks you're talking about are dump trucks. The ones we're talking about with this rental company are low boys, which come off a couple feet, not even a foot off the ground when they're pulling them. I try to introduce some information into the commission, but I guess I was too late with that. But the fact is one trailer is the single screw is like 40,000 pounds. A twin screw would carry 80,000 pounds. An excavator alone is twice that weight. And he's talking about renting them. If you rent an excavator, you're going to take it out and bring it back as soon as possible. You're not going to keep it on a property for 30 days if you're only going to use it for 2 weeks. So the in and out with the heavy equipment, with the low boy and so forth. And quite honestly, some of those side streets, I don't know how they're gonna get up and down with a wide load, so. I mean, I drove truck for 20 years, tractor trailer, so. Some of those roads are pretty tight for turns too. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, the ball's in Condon's corner, you know, he says it's not necessary. I think it is, but I'll leave it at that. Sorry, John.
John, you have you had a comment?
I just wanted to say to Mr. Cocherello that those are some of the arguments that, you know, are against imposing the bond, which is fine. I just don't want the commission to say we can't do it in this, you know, it's legally not allowed. You know, as I pointed out in the last paragraph, I understand the argument, but, you know, it's the decision of the commission if they want to investigate. There's nothing that would stop us. So that was the point, and I think Pat was kind of touching on that. So I wanted to respond to it.
Oh yeah, I would never imply that it was illegal or anything. That's not my area of expertise. It just, I was thinking in terms of intensity of use.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Any other comments from the commission on this? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion here that's already been drafted up. It does capture the points that we all were in agreement on, and the applicant was in agreement on as well too. So as a condition of approval, they will be formally abandoning all land uses and activities associated with a contractor's yard, which is you know, something that will be built into it as a condition of approval. Also built into the condition of approval is that and the use and or storage of any stone crushing machine, stone sifting or reduction machine, or any other related support machinery necessary for the operation of stone crushing, sifting, reduction machine will be strictly prohibited. So those are definitely in there and built in. The question before we move, move this to a motion for the commission to consider is, do we want to include as an additional condition of approval a road damage bond or not? And I think probably the easiest way to do that is we could, poll now and see where we are with that, and that'll determine what gets built into the motion or not. Is that agreeable with everyone?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go right down my list here, and I just need to hear, from everybody, yes or no, if the motion should be included in there for a road damage bond. Brett?
Yes.
Dan?
No.
John?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Pat? Pat?
I said no.
You said no, okay. Pete?
Yes.
Okay. And mine as chairman would have been no. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4-3 to include the motion in there. So what we have here now, and Pat, do you have the special permit approval?
I'm looking for it now. I'm having a little problem. Finding all my paper here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was a little bit of paper this week. I got a pile that'll last for a while next to me. So
yeah, I'll have a lot of note paper when this is over.
Or if you're okay, I could have John read the motions, or make the motion as well.
I hate to keep putting this on John.
John, do you have the motion in front of you from the packet?
I'm looking now.
Okay.
So many things up on my screen. Now, Dave, as a point of order with respect to the motion, when Pete and I had first discussed this, I had moved, or at least made the argument, it hadn't gone to a formal motion, but I reiterated, I don't think it should be an ongoing bond. I think it should be limited to a period of time, a year to 18 months, which would give us enough of an opportunity to see if there was going to be damage and then take the appropriate steps. Obviously, mindful of the administration's intent to foster economic development. I think we need to balance those factors. So I don't know if I could amend that motion that you made to poll, if we could ask if everyone would be in favor to that limited period.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely. Pizza Brats.
Yeah, agreed.
I think we just want to be specific. You're right in that time frame that you add into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if we have to have it, then we should have it limited.
All right. So I brought it up.
Are you thinking 12 months or 18 months? You threw both numbers out there. I was just curious before the motion comes in.
18 months would be fine with me.
I would go with a year.
Yeah, in fairness, I had said a year earlier, so I think that's what Attorney Condon had reviewed. And, so.
Okay, so 12 months.
Okay.
So motion do we have a motion for this?
There's a motion in the packet that has everything spelled out. You're just going to have to add a line item in there at the end about the 12-year road damage bond. And either you or Pat could read it, but it was the very last page of that section regarding 10 Fox Hollow.
Yeah, I have it. I'm going to have to wing it because I can't type anything into this. It looks like this PDF is I can't modify it. So, Jess,
we have a recording, so we'll have your specific wording.
Yeah, and then we can write it in after or type it in.
Yeah, I thought I sent it to you in doc form. No.
I did, but when I brought it up on my other computer, it got locked out. I can't change it.
All right, so I'll make sure I get everything detailed and then write it up after.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, motion by Commissioner. Who brought the motion up?
What was that, John?
Whose motion was this?
It's somebody needs to make the motion. Pat couldn't find it, so I asked if you wanted to make the motion.
I have it now, Mr. Soder.
All right, if the secretary has it, we'll let the secretary make the motion. Make it easier. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay. This is yes, change of use special permit approval from a contractor's yard to heavy equipment sales, storage, and rentals. I move to approve application Z-20-031, change of use with the following conditions. 1, the applicant and their signs must comply with all representations made at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and/or public hearing. 2, compliance with the statement of use dated 3/12/2020. 3, the applicant shall adhere to all representations depicted on the site plan dated March 18th, 2020, prepared by Civil 1 engineers. 3, the applicant must obtain all proper permits and/or approvals outlined in the Town of Oxford permit procedures. 4, compliance with the Town of Oxford zoning regulations as of this date. 5, the applicant shall be responsible for rendering payment to any outside consultants commission assigns to review this application. 6, any proposed sign must be presented to the ZEO to determine compliance with Article 16 of the Town of Oxford zoning regulations. 7, applicant agrees to formally abandon in writing all land uses and activities associated with Section 9.3.21 contractor's yard located at 10 Fox Hollow Road. 8, the use and/or storage of any stone crushing machine, stone sifting and/or reduction machinery or any other related support machinery necessary for the operation of a stone crushing, sifting, reduction machine is strictly prohibited. 9, sedimentation and erosion control measures on site shall be maintained in compliance with the proposed site plan and current guidelines, subject to the field review by the commission's engineer. 10, a
You want me to
road bond.
I wrote something up, Pat. Do you want me to just jump in and read that?
Yes, go ahead, John, please.
Thank you, Chairman Cotrella. 10, with a condition, with the imposition of a road damage repair bond limited to a period of 1 year in amount and terms established by town council and town attorney to cover any damage to Fox Run Road associated or caused by heavy equipment traffic over Fox Run Road.
Okay, number 11, the reason for approval is that it meets the Oxford zoning regulations is in effect as of this date.
Do we have a
Dave?
second?
Second with a comment? Dave?
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
don't see the dark scar lighting in there. This is one thing we've been leaving off in our applications. Our approvals, I should say.
Is that, yes, that's a standard.
It used to be, at one time, used to be a dark sky lighting, used to be in there all the time.
Oh,
do we have?
Well, we can add that as a we can make an amendment to this motion and add that.
Okay, Pat, can you would you be willing to make an amendment to your motion incorporating the standard boilerplate language of dark sky lighting pursuant to Oxford regulations?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Okay, adding that additional amendment for dark sky lighting pursuant to Oxford regulations as a condition of approval. Now, do we have a second on the completed motion?
Pizza Brass, second.
Second, Kerwin.
John Kerwin, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right. All right, next. Okay, next up is Z20-035A, 248 Oxford Road, owners T&J Realty, 3333 Main Street in Stratford. The applicant is the Boar's Nest / Ox Axe Company LLC. Special exception, Article 7, Section 7.3.16, sale of alcoholic beverages. Just a quick question before we move into deliberations here. Jesse, I know you were not part, I know you listened to some of the recordings. Were you able to get caught up on this particular agenda topic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you're going to be you're seated for this one, for this particular agenda item. Thank you. So we've had a number of conversations about this. Some of the things that we agreed upon with this one was a 6-foot fence, 6-foot alarmed fence with gates that allows interior access only, no exterior signage. Was there any other deliberations or conversations that we wanted to have, regarding this?
I'm sorry, what, could you repeat that?
What was that, John? I'm sorry.
Dave, I'm sorry. On my side, I was having some technical difficulty. Can you repeat your last comment? I only caught like half of it.
Oh, I was just summarizing the items that that we had talked about that seemed to be, in agreement with the board, which was if the motion was approved, the requirement of a 6-foot fence around the property. Egress would be from only nobody can enter in from the outside. The gateways would be alarmed, and no signage on that exterior fence. And also, Peter brought up the concern of making sure that dark sky lighting, et cetera. So that was those were the comments that we already had in place, and we were still deliberating in terms of our next steps since we had closed the public hearing closed the public hearing last week. That was a mouthful. Did you get all that, or?
Yeah, I did. I guess so. You're asking, does anybody want to make any comments? Are we moving to deliberations, or?
Yeah, it's moved to deliberations, and it's up to us if we have any comments. Exactly.
Pat Cotrella here, Mr. Chairman. In the motion, I would also include the requirement for any exterior lighting to be dark sky compliant.
Got it? Does anybody else have any comments regarding this one?
I do. This is John.
Go ahead.
I would urge the commissioners to deny the application, and I'll be brief to not belabor as it's getting late. As you know, that pursuant to Article 17, sale of alcoholic liquor is an additional requirement for any establishment that's involved in the sale of alcohol, pursuant specifically to 17.2.3. And I'm reading, the commission may, except as to a store, refuse to approve any location for the sale of alcoholic liquor that has reasonable cause to believe that the number of approved locations for all classes of permits in an immediate neighborhood in such that the approval of another location in the locality is detrimental to the public interest. It's a mouthful, but it basically says that the commission can consider the number of approved permittees in a particular area, and they can consider the public interest. And when regulations talk about public interest, obviously that allows the commission a lot of leeway, especially in terms of a special exception as to what's appropriate in that neighborhood. The regulation goes on to say, in reaching a conclusion, the commission may consider the character of the populations, the number of all approved permit locations in the neighborhood concerned, and the effect which a new permit location may have on such neighborhood. So I would submit that this area has too many establishments selling alcohol. I know that the applicant kept making the point that this is a private club. I would submit that that's kind of a misnomer. That's more for liability purposes. I would speculate with respect to the axe throwing that they need people to sign off a waiver. Basically, it's a 1-year cover charge. You pay a cover charge for a year, sign off on a waiver of liability if you're injured by axe throwing, and you're able to basically go to this bar and treat it as a proprietorship of alcohol. So I think the record, in fact, it was Commissioner Zabras that went through all the different locations in that particular neighborhood. I know that we need to foster economic development, but I don't think we need another bar. I was also a little put off by the way this application came before us. And I know there were a couple of commissioners, specifically again, Commissioner Zabras that recall, and I thought I recalled them saying on the first application, they were not going to sell alcohol. Then the story was that their bring your own bottle provisions were too difficult to comply with the 3 weeks that they were in operation. And then that they abandoned that and just said they got a new lease for the extra space, which they had already indicated they had on the first application. So the whole thing just didn't seem right to me, but I don't think that it's appropriate to have another bar in this small shopping plaza. That would make 3 locations in an area of probably 200 yards that are selling alcohol. I just don't think it's a good thing for Oxford. So I would urge the commissioners not to go forward. Obviously, reasonable minds can disagree, however.
Dave, Pizza Brass.
Recognize. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay, if we okay this way, it'll be four establishments that sells liquor in that one area. And there's also 8 of them between Great Hill Road and Town Hall that sells liquor. 8 places and then 2 liquor stores. So we're talking 10 places that sell liquor in less than a mile and a half. I think that is kind of excessive for that area there, but that's just my thought. I'll leave it to you guys. Thank you.
Pat Cotarella here. I do
recognize Pat.
I do agree with John on the effect that I don't really like the way this application came in. It seemed a little underhanded to me, but that's a personal opinion. Sometimes I've seen in other cities and stuff, a lot of the liquor establishments are concentrated in one area. You know, you have an area, a district or whatever, where that's where the majority of your alcohol consumption is, and it's not spread out throughout the city. So that's a mixed feeling on whether it's too many in one area or that's what you want to encourage. Keep all the liquor consumers in a close area rather than spreading them out all over town. Just a thought.
Dave, Pizza Brass again. I
Okay,
think Pat's
go ahead.
forgetting about the breweries we have on the other side of town and the wineries. I mean, how many more do we need? We just had what was that, the Boar's Head? We know the incident that happened there. I mean, that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Brett Olbrys.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
I would agree with some of the comments that fellow commissioners have made, but I think at the end of the day, consumers will determine where they want to go to drink. And if a consumer so chose to go to this establishment, and if they so chose to be a member, I think that's the right of that consumer to do so. I don't know if it necessarily takes away from the look and feel of the environment. But again, I'll leave it up to the consumer to make the decision as to which bar they would want to visit.
Hey, Dave. Jesse,
Whether it's this
Trevor.
one or another one.
Sorry, Brett.
That's okay.
You all set, Brett?
Dave.
I'm all set. I'm all set.
Okay, right. Jess, go ahead.
The establishment's already approved for alcohol consumption anyways. So, you know, whether or not they're selling it or the people are bringing it in, they're still consuming alcohol. I agree with Pat as well, to where, you know, a lot of these establishments that people are consuming alcohol are in one spot. And I really don't necessarily agree with the fact that there's places to consume alcohol, you know, whether they're breweries or liquor stores. I mean, the only thing that I'm seeing is, like I said, you know, the last meeting that I brought up is that the people are already consuming alcohol. So the owners of the establishment recognized an issue and they were addressing that problem of the BYOB thing. I mean, I don't see where, you know, where you're consuming the alcohol, like Brett said, has really, you know, they're gonna go where they want anyway. So I agree with Brett as that as well.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has any comments that we'd like to take into consideration?
Just one quick point. I understand everyone's position and I respect that. My only point to Jesse, I'm sorry, what's Schremmer's last comment? They're only going to go there if they're allowed, if they have a permit. They can't get a permit unless we approve it. And there's a lot more consumption if they're selling it as opposed to complying with their bring your own bottle requirements, which I think they were limiting to 1 container. So, you know, it's not true that, you know, they're going to drink where they want. I can't go and drink in Walmart. You have to go to a liquor permit. Liquor is highly regulated. in this state. There's a bunch of statutes. So just a little point of difference, but I understand where you guys are coming from, and I respect that.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, Dave, this is Commissioner Wall. I just, I think I made this comment the last time. I just see this as a little more desirable for the town, from the town's perspective. To John's point just now, there's a lot more control, where we give them the ability or the right to sell the liquor as opposed to being a private club where it's served anyway, right? That seems to me a little more loose, I guess I'll call it. And then what meant more to me was, of course, was reading our resident trooper's responses, and he had no outright objections. So anyway, I see this as more advantageous to the town to have them selling the liquor as opposed to privately bringing it in.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? Okay. So what we did here is we had a motion drafted up already, for this that Keith was able to put together for us. I do want to make one note on this to the motion that's in your packet, and that's regarding point number 2. We're specific in terms of that. It would be there would be a 6-foot fence, and the fence gates would be only ability to be opened from the interior and would be alarmed. So that would be the consideration in number 2, that it is a 6-foot fence. It's not the patio doors themselves, as opposed to the gates for the fence that would be leading to the outside. We wanted to prevent folks being able to come in and out from those exits. So it would be only be able to be open from the interior for emergency purposes, and it would be alarmed. The other amendment to this motion would be to make sure that we add in the Oxford language regarding dark sky lighting. So other than that, you folks have the motion in front of you. Is there any other comments regarding that, or is this something that we can move forward on?
Dave, just to be clear, the amendment would just add in line 2, patio and then a caret exit doors are only to be open.
Well, I think, to be clear, our conversation directly, during the public hearing and talking to Attorney Fisher, was that we were asking about the gates on the fence. It wasn't necessarily the doorways from the patio to lead into the building. It was the gate, the gates on the fence, which would be an emergency exit. We did not want people to have the ability to come into the patio and bypass the front doors and bypass the procedures.
How about then just patio fence gates are for exit only and only to be open from interior?
Patio fence gates, okay?
That are only for exit or emergency exit.
And I would also add that they should be alarmed.
Okay, I'm just jotting this down here. Okay, so basically, number 2 is going to be patio fence gates are only for emergency exit. Are only for emergency exit. Will be alarmed and will be locked on the outside, and will only. All right, so we actually already says that. So
And no posting of signs on the fence.
yeah, that's listed in number 3. I want to make sure we get the language straight in number 2 here. Patio fence gates are only. Yeah, actually, since it's captured in there, so patio fence gates are only. Patio fence gates are only to be opened from the interior, will be alarmed, will be locked on the outside, and will only be used for emergency exits.
I think that covers it.
I think that covers it. But I do want to caveat in here too, because I don't see. We want to be able to specify that the fence will be 6 feet also. So we might have to add a number on here that the patio fence will be
on line 3,
a minimum of 6 feet high.
On line 3, just say surrounding the patio, comma, and that fence will be at least 6 feet high.
Okay, got it. Okay. Pat, do you have that to be able to make the motion?
Commissioner, this is Attorney Karen Fisher. I just had a question on a clarification.
Actually, hold on one second, Attorney. Are we able to? I don't think we're able to.
No, we're not.
No, I'm sorry.
I can make that motion, Dave. And then after I make the motion, somebody can second for discussion. At that point, you can add the changes. Is that acceptable?
That's fine.
So, okay, I move to approve Z-20-035A. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission have received application Z-20-035A for a special permit. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission considered this application a regularly scheduled meeting, public hearing on May 19th and June 2nd, 2020, and June 16th, 2020. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission has taken into consideration the proximity of churches, schools, libraries, playgrounds, or any place frequented by minors when granting approval for an alcohol liquor use. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission considered the following documents all drawn or prepared by the applicant within their deliberation. 1, application letter signed by owner. 2, statement of use. 3, zoning permit application. 4, photograph of proposed privacy fence area and sample fencing materials. 5, layout of enclosed fence seating and service area. 6, membership and employee handbooks. 7, correspondence with Sergeant Borowski, Oxford resident state trooper. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission considered the town of Oxford application Z-20-035A and finds the application conforms to all requirements of the Oxford zoning regulations and is therefore approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, compliance with all town of Oxford regulations and ordinances in effect as of this date. 2, the patio doors are only to be opened from the interior and will be locked on the outside and will only be used for emergency exits only. 3, no exterior or interior signage will be allowed on the fencing surrounding the patio. 4, the applicant shall be responsible for rendering payment to any outside consultants the commission assigns to review this application. 5, the applicant and their assigned must comply with all representations made at Planning and Zoning Commission meetings or at public hearings regarding this application. 6, compliance with the statement of use submitted with the application. 7, it is the responsibility of the owner applicant to ensure capability of communications with the fire department and EMS. If the requirement is not fulfilled, it is the responsibility of the owner applicant to rectify the problem. That's it.
And you are open to amending that?
First, you need a second for.
I'll second that for discussion purposes only.
Okay, we have a second. So Pat, my suggestion would be on point number 2 that we would amend the motion to indicate that patio fence gates are only to be used from the interior. They will be alarmed and they will be locked on the outside and will only be used for emergency exits. The second question I have would be on number 3. No exterior or interior signage will be allowed on the fencing surrounding the patio, and that fencing will be a minimum of 6 feet high.
I accept those.
And finally, I would add point 8 regarding inclusion of Oxford's boilerplate language regarding dark skylighting.
I accept that amendment also.
Okay. So accepting that amendment, do we have a second to the revised amendment? Unless I'm doing that wrong. I think that's the way to do it.
I'll second it if needed.
All right, we have a second of the revised amendment with those notes from Brett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Respectfully, John Kerwin, no.
Very good, thank you. So the motion passes 6-1.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
I
go
voted
ahead.
against it. Pizza Brass, I voted against it also.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not hear your voice there, I'm sorry. So the motion passes
Sorry.
5-2. Thank you, everybody. Okay, next up on the agenda is from a matters on which a public hearing was held, Z20-033, Lot 1R, Pheasant Run Road. The owner and applicant is 589 Investments LLC, PO Box 506, Oxford, Connecticut. This is regards to excavation of 13,320 cubic yards of material and the associated transportation route to move that. And we closed that public hearing. So again, this is something where we had referenced earlier to notes from Jim Galligan regarding the inclusion of a road damage bond. First and foremost, I wanted to ask Jesse, were you able to catch up on those notes regarding this particular agenda topic? Jesse Schremer.
Dave, I was only about to get halfway through this, so that's your decision if you want to add Josh.
Okay, you're okay with being recused if you didn't completely cover everything?
Yep, that's fine. I'd rather do that because I know he was here the last meeting.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going for this agenda item only. I am going to seat Josh for the deliberations. Josh Dykstra. And, okay. So I'll open up to the commission. Do we have any further questions or comments regarding this particular agenda item? We've closed the public hearing and open now the time for the deliberations.
Dave, this is John
Yes.
Kerwin. The recommended bond here doesn't seem to be a road repair bond. It would be like a I don't know if Keith can elaborate on that. That wasn't what was discussed with Jim Galligan and Chow. It's paragraph 10.
Chair Dave, would you like me to speak now?
Yes, if you could address John's point regarding that in the motion, that would be fine.
Oh, okay. If you look in Article 14 under excavation, there is a section that has to do with approvals, and 14.3.11. This section was that number 10 was taken exactly from the Oxford zoning regulations 14.3.11. It doesn't make reference to a road bond. It makes reference to a surety bond to assure the completion of the project.
All right. I don't know if we're really that concerned with the project being completed. It's a private project, but we had discussed a road surety bond. Like that was.
John, not to interrupt you, but if you also look at number 3 of the conditions, I think it actually covers a lot more than a surety bond would. All costs.
I read the entire motion. There's nothing in there for a road bond. I guess my point is to Chairman Sauter.
Sure.
We're going to need to add that in addition because
no problem.
Both parties were in agreement. Both Mr. Galligan and if someone could help me, it's Chow. How do you pronounce?
What was that, John? I'm sorry.
Pardon me.
What was that? I'm sorry.
How do you pronounce?
Chadwick Barros. I think it's Barros.
No,
I think
the
Siwan.
professional engineer that represents
Siwan.
I keep butchering it, and I apologize to Siwan. But he had agreed in his correspondence to Mr. Galligan's request for a road repair bond. So that should be specifically put in the motion.
Sorry about that.
All right. We can use the same language or just. a road damage for the travel route.
So the commission should consider, okay, so so placement of surety protection against damage to the town roads by this operation.
Yep, and limited to the travel route.
Limited to the travel route, got it. John, are you saying that replaces number 3, or are you saying that's in addition to number 3?
That would be an addition. It would be a number 11, and then paragraph 11 would be paragraph 12.
Got it. Any other comments from the other folks on the commission?
Yeah, I have a comment, Dave. On this, who determines if this road gets damaged, who did it, and when it was done? Because I traveled this road today just to make sure. I went this route, and some of them sections are pretty rough up there, and I don't, I want to be fair on both sides with the town and the contractors. Some of that road up there is pretty tough, and I don't want to see this contractor get blamed for something that's prior. So who's going to determine if it's new or old damage? Our engineer?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that in the past, they've done a pre-operation survey and videoed or took pictures of the road prior to the start of the operation. And then, of course, that's your baseline for any additional damage. I don't know if that holds true, but that's what's been there before.
Has that been done?
Sutter,
yeah.
That would be done, if I can just jump in, this is John.
Go ahead.
That would be done upon the approval of a bond. When they get the surety, they would go out, do a survey of the road, take measurements of the crown, all the declivities and everything. And then they have a baseline. And the surety is involved as well, the person that's holding the bond. So yeah, that probably hasn't been done yet, but it will be done when they go to post the bond.
Okay, great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments from the commission on this? Hearing none. Pat, do you want to run through this particular motion the same way as the last one, and then we'll just amend it for, for the point regarding the road surety bond?
Yeah, that works. Okay. Okay, this is a special exception approval Z-20-033, Lot 1R, Pheasant Run Road. I move to approve the following resolution. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission has received application Z-20-033 for a special exception. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission considered this application at a regularly scheduled meeting, public hearing on April 21st, 2020, May 5th, 2020, May 19th, 2020, June 2nd, 2020, and June 16th, 2020. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission has taken into consideration whether the proposed filling will not depress the values or adversely affect surrounding properties in the neighborhood and or along the proposed truck route. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission considered the following documents, all drawn or prepared by the applicant within their deliberation. Application for excavation filling activities at Lot 1R Pheasant Run Business Park. Applicant and owner 589 Investments LLC, dated 3/9/20. Project review letters for Lot 1R Pheasant Run Business Park from James Galligan PE, dated 4/23/20. Response letters to James Galligan PE 4/23/20 from Civil One Engineering, dated 4/30/20. 4, existing condition survey, conceptual site plan, grading and erosion control plan, intermittent grading and erosion control plan, details and erosion control narrative, Lot 1R Pheasant Run Business Park, dated 3/6/20 and revised 4/30/20, prepared for 589 Investments LLC by Civil One Engineering. 5, transportation route between Lot 10 Woodruff Hills Industrial Park and Lot 1R Pheasant Run Business Park, dated 4/30/20. Whereas the Oxford Planning and Zoning Commission considered the Town of Oxford application Z-20-033 and finds the application conforms to all requirements of the Oxford zoning regulations and is therefore approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, compliance with all Town of Oxford regulations and ordinances in effect as of this date. 2, The CEO shall receive a report every 6 months, that shows the progress of the earth excavation and filling activities to be prepared by a licensed engineer or land surveyor. 3, all costs incurred by the town in monitoring the application's compliance as determined by the commission shall be paid by the applicant within 30 days of billing. 4, the applicant will be required to pay all costs of special consultant or studies as deemed necessary by the commission at any time during the period from initial review through inspection and final acceptance of any improvements. 5, the applicant and their assigns must comply with all representations made at the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings or at public hearings regarding this application. 6, the applicant shall submit one complete copy of the set of plans which reflects these conditions of approval with a copy of the conditions of approval attached. 7, the applicant shall have a pre-construction meeting with appropriate town staff prior to any excavation filling activity. 8, sedimentation and erosion control measures on site shall be maintained in compliance with the proposed site plan and current guidelines subject to field review by the commission's engineer. 9, there will be 2 truck trips per hour during weekdays, which is 16 to 18 truckloads per day, and each truck will carry 16 to 18 cubic yards of earth material. 10, the applicant shall post a surety with the selectmen of Oxford in a form satisfactory to town council and the amount approved by the commission to guarantee faithful performance of the work in accordance with plans as approved, including processing operation. This surety shall cover a period of not less than 2 months beyond the period during the special exception permit is effective. 11, the commission grants the special exception for a period of 2 years from the date of this approval.
Thank you, Pat. Do we have a second for this? Do we have a second?
Second. Pizza Brass, second.
And Pete, were you seconding that for discussion?
No, just seconding it, that's all. I have nothing to say about it.
Okay.
Do you have discussion? Want me to withdraw my second? And if something to say, somebody wants to discuss it?
We had talked about an amendment to the motion.
Right. I'm all set with it.
Are you withdrawing it or?
Are you withdrawing it?
Yeah, I'm withdrawing it. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Would somebody like to second so we can, if there's consider any possible amendments to it?
I'll second with the amendment of the road damage bond language.
Okay, we have a second with the amendment. Pat, would you be open to an amendment that would include as the new number 11 that placement of surety protection against damage to town roads by this operation limited to the travel route, and then subsequently moving number 11 down to number 12?
Yes, I will accept that amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second to the amended motion?
Second.
Second from Brett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Has Pete joined us? Yes, good. All right. So next up on the great, thank you. So next up on the agenda, old business, other matters. We have a settlement discussion regarding 2123 Nichols Road, TPB Contractors LLC and TNC Partners LLC. This is application for site plan and special exception, consideration of proposed settlement of appeal pursuant to practice book section 14-7B J TPB Contractors LLC versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Oxford, docket number AAN CV 18-602-9419S. Note that all materials related to the proposed settlement are on file at the zoning office. So at this time, I want to introduce Peter Olson, who's going to kind of walk us through a little bit here, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, thanks, Dave. So just let me take it back a little bit to the beginning. You had an application before you for a site plan and special exception on the property. You approved the application, and it was a special exception for contractor's yard and the accompanying site plan. You approved the application, except that you denied the portion of the application that asked for permission to conduct rock crushing activities. Basically, your reason was that rock crushing is not permitted under the zoning regulations and therefore it shouldn't be allowed here. During that time and subsequent to that, you adopted new regulations that cover contractors' yards and earth processing activities. This denial of rock crushing was made before, or the application was made before those new regulations came into effect. So it was considered under the old regulations. An appeal was taken to court, and an appeal is currently pending. We were approached by the property owner with a proposed resolution of the appeal. That resolution would be to allow rock crushing within a building to be constructed on the property that complies with what the new regulations require for rock crushing, that it be in a building. The materials before you, I'm not sure if I can show them. I will try. Have to find the file. Can you see this that I have shared to the screen?
Not yet.
No. Nope.
All right. I think I can do it now. It keeps giving me a the video of everybody in a repeating manner. I'm gonna try it one more time.
There should be a button in the bottom right that says present.
Yeah.
now.
There we go. I had to select the window. Okay, you should see that now.
Yep, now it's starting up.
This is the proposed building. As you can see, there's a front elevation, which has a course of blocks below ground level. A rear elevation that shows that corrugated metal siding enclosing the entire portion of the structure. The front portion would open when the machine was in use. The machine would be essentially down below ground level. So you can see when the machine is in use, that's what's going on there. And then the top of it, I'm going to circle this area in the back. That's the hopper. That portion of the roof would open, and the material would be deposited in that. But that when the machine was not in use, it would be closed. So what we end up with is a full enclosed building. I'm going to open up the proposed site plan. Okay, can you see the site plan on my screen, or is it still the same? Good.
You got it.
Existing building that you approved for contractor yard purposes here, with the yard here, and this is the location of the new building, which meets all the requirements of the zoning regulations. The process here is that because there is an pending appeal, we can propose to the court that that be settled by approving this site plan with this architectural design. The commission is required to vote on that proposed settlement at a meeting. Although this is not a public hearing, it is a public meeting, and we have duly listed it on the agenda. If the commission does so vote to settle it and direct me to take action to implement that settlement, I'll file a motion with the court, and the court is then required to have a hearing on the proposed settlement before it can approve it. And I don't know whether the court will do that, obviously. So But this is the first step in front of you, which is to review the proposed settlement and authorize me to go and propose the settlement to the court. As I said, this is not a public hearing, although I generally advise commissions that on the settlement that it's worthwhile to ask if there are any members of the public who wish to comment on this before you make your decision. And I'm obviously available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Peter. I think we'll start with questions from, if anybody has any questions for Peter from the commission standpoint. Recognize John Kerwin.
I'll go. Thank you, Chairman. Attorney Olson, just a quick question, and I'm sure the judge will ask this as well. How do we know that this now complies with the current regulations? Has the town engineer gone over this like a site plan? I know that there's not a requirement for that with respect to a settlement, but that may be something that the judge would inquire about.
So I guess I'll break that down into two pieces. The first is, because this application was filed before the regulations changed, there is no requirement that it comply with the new regulations. A settlement, to some extent, can paper over anything that is deemed to not comply, as long as it's approved by the court. So that's piece one, is it does not have to comply with the new regulation. However, by putting this in a building, what we have done is essentially get the applicant to propose something that does comply with the new regulations. No, we have not had the town engineer review it, but it is such a small building off in the corner there that really the only question is, does it comply with the setbacks and things like that? I've reviewed it, and my opinion is that it does. But there isn't any reason to, for instance, open this up to question drainage, stormwater drainage, anything like that he would have reviewed the first time around.
Now, my question is, and I appreciate the fact that this is pre-amendment, but just as a concern to make sure that the judge doesn't have any concerns about it when he has to accept the settlement. You're confident in your review of the new regulations. I think you helped us draft them, didn't you?
Yes. Yep.
So you would be able to tell the judge and to tell us, the commissioners, that this particular enclosure, were it to come under the new application or the new regulations, it would comply. You don't think that we need an engineer to do that, or you would be able to?
Correct.
Fine. Okay, that's all I have.
Anybody else on the commission have any questions? All right, hearing none, are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this?
Oh, Attorney Dominic Thomas, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Attorney Dominic Thomas, I represent TPB Contractors, and I just would like to commend Attorney Olson for engaging in this discussion and working back and forth with my client and being able to propose something that, as Attorney Olson mentioned, it is a settlement of a lawsuit, but my client has chosen to take the extra step and create the building, which frankly, he modeled his design after the similar operation that takes place on Guerrero Construction, on a much larger scale, where the building is open to be able to load and the building is open to be able to empty, but it is enclosed other than that. So he was able to accomplish that. If you look at the site plan carefully, you'll notice also there is a line on the site plan. One of the 2 pages of the site plan is actually a cropped version, but you can see it better. We ensured that we were outside the 100-foot upland review area for wetlands, so that incur that. And I think it's kind of obvious that we comply with all the setbacks and everything, given the size of the property. But and I thank the commission for considering it, and I thank Attorney Olson for working with me on it.
Thank you, Attorney Thomas. I see a note that popped up here that Stephen Koulas has, and I apologize, I pronounced your name wrong, but Stephen Koulas had some comments.
Actually, Commissioner's Attorney Koulas, and you're one of the few people that gets it right, so I appreciate that. I would like to say that I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Robert Worden, who is also a party to the current pending appeal. We filed a motion to intervene in the appeal, and the Superior Court judge ruled that we have sufficient interest by being a resident, owning a residence close to this location to be made a party to the appeal. And I'd like to address what's been short-shifted here. I would like the board to really look at the new regulations. And if you were to look at the new regulations, this proposed settlement simply does not comply. The new regulations are not limited to having a crusher contained. They also limit the type of materials that are to be crushed, where the materials are to be brought from. It's my reading of the new regulations that only those materials that come from the site itself can be crushed. Now, Attorney Olson says, well, we don't have to comply because the application was under the old. Remember, your old regulations prohibited crushing at all times. So what you have here is one that neither complies with the old regulations, nor does it comply with the new regulations. It complies with only one aspect of the new regulations. I would request the board, before it makes any decisions, to take a thorough review. These regulations were drafted very thoroughly and were adopted after several meetings in which there was public comment, specifically as to what materials were to be crushed. There's nothing in this proposed settlement that addresses that issue. Hours of operation. There's nothing in the proposed settlement that addresses that issue. Noise barriers. There's nothing in proposed settlement that addresses that issue. Simply put, there's insufficient information in the settlement that would address the concerns in the current regulations. And I respectfully disagree with both Attorney Thomas and Attorney Olson that what is proposed before this board tonight in any way complies with the new regulations. And on behalf of Mr. Worden, we would respectfully request that the board deny the settlement agreement. And if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them. But I really, really request that you review the new regulations. This so far falls short of it. It's unbelievable.
Thank you very much for the input.
And by the way, Mr. I would be objecting to any proposed settlement along those lines in the court hearing.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is there any other questions that the commission would like to bring up with Peter Olson?
Yeah, I have a fast question. You're saying the roof on this building rolls backwards when he's crushing?
There's a portion of it that opens. I don't know if it opens or if it flips up or down. Maybe Dominic can answer that.
Wasn't the purpose of this building and to put the machine inside to cut down the noise, eliminate the smoke and dust? And if we're going to open up a roof when the machine's in operation, we're going to have dust, we're going to have more noise. So what is the purpose of putting bricks around it and not putting a lid on it when it's in function?
Well, that's the way the other one that you've approved as well. It's not really possible for it to operate in a completely enclosed manner. You have to get the material into and out of the machine. The point of the enclosure is to minimize the noise. But you're never going to eliminate it completely and still be able to operate with a rational idea of what a building should be for this kind of use.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commission? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion accepting the settlement and authorizing council to take whatever steps are necessary to implement.
I'll make that motion for discussion.
We have a motion for discussion. We have a second.
I'll second it, Pat Cocherella.
A second. Okay. What additional discussion would we like to add to the conversation from the commission?
I would just like to hear Attorney Olson address some of the concerns that Attorney Kulis has brought up.
I just want to know, just Attorney Downtown, I don't mean to interrupt, but all of a sudden, believe it or not, in the middle of the meeting, after Attorney Kulis was concluding, my laptop decided it wanted to update on its own. So I missed everything. I was going to address some Attorney Kulis's comments. I managed to get back on using my iPad. So if I could have time, I would appreciate the opportunity to respond.
John, is this
Hello?
John, yeah, John, I'm just wondering from a protocol perspective. I just want to make sure we're following the right. It's okay for Attorney Thomas to respond back to some of those comments, or would you rather hear the comments responded back by Peter?
No, I would defer to Attorney Thomas. I don't know what his request is, though. He didn't hear anything, right?
No, I heard all of Attorney Kulis's comments, and then when I went to click to unmute myself, all of a sudden my laptop decided it was going to reboot, and it did an automatic reboot, and then I switched to my iPad. That's what I'm on right now.
I wish I had that when we were in court together. That would have been nice.
Yeah, it would have been really good. The ability to reboot.
Chairman, I'll defer to Attorney Thomas. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Thomas.
Yeah, the only comment, I did participate very heavily in the new regulations. Attorney Kulis was quoting, I think, from the changes you made to Article 14. Article 14 in your regulations, which you just dealt with on Lot 1B and Pheasant Run, is a regulation that applies to when someone is doing site work. You have, and I've pointed this out, numerous contractors that are operating contractors' yards and are processing on their sites material that they bring back. In addition to Article 14 changes, in your new regulations, you defined contractor yard, and in the contractor yard use is where you, I believe in the special exception section, where you address the issue of a contractor yard processing in an enclosed building. And that is what we attempted to address. In that section, there is no regulations, there is no restrictions. What it does say, it defines all the types of materials that are required to be processed within an enclosed building, is what it says in your regulation. Again, reminding you that we filed this application before those regulations. What Attorney Kulis has pointed out were some of the things that you have in Article 14, which deals with site work on a site. So for instance, on the Pheasant Run site, they could actually, under Article 14, rock process material on that site itself, if they had asked you for the special exception. Now, under your regulations, they have no ability to take the material to a yard in Oxford and process it, because Article 14 only allows you to process on the site. My client is a contractor yard, and he is processing the material and reprocessing it that he uses in site work, and he is doing it on his site. So I think that that is a big difference between the two, and what we are looking at is doing a building that complies with the contractor yard definition and the contractor yard requirements, which are in, I believe, in the special exception provisions. That's all I have to say, and I defer to Peter also.
The one thing I did want to address is I believe the hours of operation are handled by your zoning regulations and the approval that was issued. The more general answer to you, John, is that this is a proposed settlement. And in a settlement, it's not necessarily the case that the commission is acting in strict adherence to the procedural requirements of things like site plan applications and special exception applications. The alternative to a settlement is to say to the applicant, you go ahead and file a new site plan application under the new regulations and make this all happen that way. And that's certainly an option the applicant has and always has had to do that. But they brought it to us as a settlement because they're saying to us, you can continue to litigate this and go through briefing and oral argument and maybe end up with a case to the appellate court, or you can just end it right now with what is a compromise that recognizes the new regulations and the things that the commission thinks are important about the new regulations, but is in reality presented under the old regulations, which is what governs the application. And so, the details of a site plan aren't something that we've considered or included in the proposal to the commission. That it's just that would be a detail under the new regulations, which is not. We're not making them file an application for site plan. We're saying we're approving something that looks kind of like that, but is a compromise of and a resolution of the appeal.
Well, and Peter, I appreciate that, but ultimately we're settling a case, all right? And so there has to be a reason why we would say settle this as opposed to prosecute it and enforce our regulations. The way I was thinking is that why would we bother prosecuting the case, make him then, let's say we prevail, he would then be entitled to make an application under the new regs and go from there. I think the reason why we would settle the case is because he complies already with the new regs and is willing to comply with those new regs. So, I think that's why we would settle the case. At least that was the perspective that I got. So I wanted to hear your response to Attorney Kulas, his concerns that this wouldn't comply with the new, with all those new requirements. Even though I understand that it's under the old application, obviously we don't want to just give somebody carte blanche now to just go on and not comply with the new regulations. The hope is that they get into compliance with the new regulation. I don't know if I made myself clear on that.
Yeah, you did. I don't have the new regulations here in front of me to go through point by point and do that right now. That's if you and the commission think that's an important thing to do, then let's take the time to do this and push this to the next meeting for action.
Can I inquire? Do we have the time?
Yeah, there's no time.
I don't see the courts pushing trials right now.
No, I think Dominic just disappeared. I think he's got some obligation to file a brief at some point, but I don't remember when that date is, or whether the court has actually. Oh yeah, we did just set a new scheduling order, and I just don't remember what date it is for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, our next meeting would be July, for the first Tuesday in July, which is 1st, maybe. I'm just gonna check my calendar.
The 4th is a Saturday, Pete.
So it'd be the 7th,
Yeah.
Tuesday
I
the
don't know
7th.
if the chairman agreed, but that might be, if we're not under a time constraint, it's a good way to, I think, settle the case. It's a reason why we could settle the case because he's in compliance and at least allay the judge's concerns, because I think he's going to have the same concerns that I have. Well, why are you settling it then? And I think that's a great reason. If he is in compliance with what the new regs would require, then that's a reason to settle the case. If not, is there a problem with the case that we, I don't see it that way. So I think,
Yeah, I'm not going to advise you guys in a public manner. It's
Yeah,
the
but
prognosis indicates.
yeah, my point is, I think it's a good, we're not under a time constraint. We don't have to do a full site plan, but just, say, yeah, it's in compliance. I don't know how much is entailed, and it might be too much. I'll leave that to the commissioner, but it's a suggestion, and we could move on to other things.
I mean, I'm open to the path of what the commission wants to vote on. We had a motion with seconded with discussion. We could certainly table this to the next meeting to talk about it more. Whatever the commission decides they feel is going to be in the best interest of what's been brought up.
Just Attorney Thomas, I'm assuming you have your books in front of you. The comments with respect to contractor yard have nothing to do with what Attorney Koulas presented. They have nothing. I mean, there's nothing in there that says, he said it has to be material on the site. That isn't in the contractor yard provision that you passed, which is in your regulations. He said you're limited to what you can do. That is in Article 14. This isn't an Article 14 case.
Well,
I mean, it's right in the regs.
Mr. Chairman, I'm having problems with my computer. May I address some procedural questions, Mr. I forget one of the commissioners raised about timing, and also just to respond a little bit to the argument that Mr. Thomas has made. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Yep,
okay.
go ahead.
John, just so you know, I haven't seen Attorney Olson's new scheduling order, but we're talking about a hearing date no sooner than October of this year. And speaking with the trial judge, because of the COVID situation and attempts to have virtual hearings, that's the earliest it can happen. So there is no court time pressure whatsoever if the meeting is going to take place in July. And it's not even a pressure for Attorney Thomas to get a brief in if the meeting is going to take place in July. And I just want to address, this is not just an Article 14 about site plan improvement. It concerns the materials and the regulations and what materials and where the materials come from concern all crushing operations, whether it's site development or otherwise. I don't have the full regs in front of me, the same as Peter Olson, but that's my recollection of it when it was passed. And I urge the board before it votes to review the entire new regulations. And quite frankly, I'm not giving advice to my client. I'm confident of the defendants prevailing on this appeal.
Mr. Chairman,
the regulations that the board acted on were clear, and I don't see a basis for overturning its decision.
Commissioner Obrist?
I'd like to make a motion to recess this to a future meeting.
I think we have a motion on the table with discussion right now, so I think we have to act on that motion to either rescind that motion or...
I'll rescind that motion.
You made the original motion?
Correct.
Okay. Motion has been rescinded. Brett?
I'd like to make a motion to recess this to the next scheduled meeting, or at some meeting, at some date in the future when we could all agree that this should come up again.
Well, I think you have to be specific in terms of the next meeting.
Okay. For the next meeting, which is July 6th, we said, or Tuesday, July 6th.
The next regularly scheduled meeting.
I'll second that.
I second that.
John Cohen. All those in favor of the motion to recess this until our next planning and zoning regularly scheduled meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any. Voted. The motion is unanimous. We'll recess this to our next regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to participate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Take it easy, Steve.
Okay. All right, moving on through the agenda. We have no new business. We have no public hearings to schedule. We have no new business, so the next section up is going to be zoning enforcement. And Steve, what I'd like you to do for the zoning enforcement section is touch on each one individually. Let us know what has changed since your last status update a couple of weeks ago, so the commission can think about it, decide and discuss it, and ask you any questions that it might have, and that way we can kind of, move through this list here. And if there's anything on this list that's closed, when we get to it, just say this is closed and we can move on to the next one. So I want to kind of take that approach. That way we can look at each one as we go through it. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the first one. Steve McCary, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
There you are. We got you now,
Sorry.
Steve. Did you hear what I was saying?
I did. I heard everything. So 317 Rig Enzar, I spoke to him today, and he basically told me he's got a lawyer. You can, of course, him. He's hired a lawyer to keep his vehicles there. Kevin Condon
Dave, I can't hear him.
Steve, you're cutting in. You're cutting in and out.
You're breaking up, Steve.
How's this? Is this better?
Yeah.
That's a little better. That's a little bit better,
God,
Steve. Why don't
I
you
don't
start
know.
again?
So 317 Rig Street, Matt's got a lawyer. He lawyered up, so Kevin Condon has I think the second cease and desist. I'll give him a buzz tomorrow on that. Have him call Matt's lawyer and see what's going on.
Okay.
Hold on. Did you hear me?
Any comments from the commission,
Yes.
or is Steve okay to move forward to the next one?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Steve.
You're all set? Go to the next one?
Yep. Go ahead.
All right. 27 Solano Drive. That was the vehicles of the corner of 188 and Solano Drive. Applicant would be Alan Goldstone. Today, he had 3 vehicles out there, 3 trucks, and he had 2 vehicles with mass plates. He's moved 12 of those trucks to his facility in Waterbury, and he sent me a picture of them there. So the only thing he has there, and I sent some registration out, but 2 of them have mass plates on them. So he told me he's going to bring them back to his property in Massachusetts. Other than that, I think he's in good shape. He got rid of a lot of stuff. Yeah, he was always telling us he bought a business. Once he starts that, he's going to bring the stuff there. Any comments?
So I'm not
Yeah, I
sure
got a
if I
question.
understand. Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead, Brett.
No, I'm not. I wasn't following that. So what is left at his property?
He's got 3 vehicles that are registered in the town of Oxford at his house, not his business. The other, let me see, he had 17. So the other 12 or 13 went up to his property in Waterbury where he has a new business. And he has 2 dump trucks with mass plates on them, which he said he's going to move to Mass.
So there's 5 vehicles at his property?
Yes, and 3 are registered here in Oxford, and they're all roadworthy, and 2 are registered in Mass. I know there's some type of state statutes where you reside, you have to register your vehicles. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah,
It's not in our town. It's not in our town regulations. It's in the state.
Dave, this is John Kerwin. Yeah, that's 14-12, the Connecticut General Statutes. He's required, he should have been paying taxes on all those vehicles. And I think he still probably owes us taxes for 2 years worth of that property. I drove by and saw a couple of mass plates on the pickup trucks, not the dump trucks.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, listen, we can keep it on the agenda. I can keep looking at it and go from there. But like I said, Kevin Condon already has a fine on him, and he's moved the vehicles off the property. I was out there, in fact, with Pat. He was on the road, so I flagged him down, and he saw it too. So, he's making some progress.
Steve, we have the same house as Goldstones, because when I was up there Sunday, I counted about 7 trucks on the property and a van. It looks like a racing, some kind of racing trailer.
Yeah, he's got that's his hobby racing trailer. They're all over Oxford or stuff like that. I mean, that's registered in our town. He had some type of trailer. You know, I assume that was registered, or it is. I have copies in my office. I may have forwarded them to.
I'm not trying to give the guy a hard time or, push him. But the remaining fact, if anything happens to that house with a fire starts or something, he's not getting out of there. That's my main concern.
You know,
is,
if you
the
want,
health
we
of-
could probably, I can probably give Scott a call, have him look at it and get his thoughts on it. You know, and if he's good with it, then he's good with it. But if that's a concern of yours, I can certainly reach out to him and ask him about that.
As we know, Mr. Goldstone, we know that he's not in that physical condition. If something, God forbid, something happened there, fire started, he's not able to run out as fast as, we could. That's my main concern, and my only concern, not to give him a hard time, but make sure he's going to be safe there. I think that's our priority is making sure our taxpayers are safe.
I could certainly, reach out to Scott this week and ask him to go out there and look at the property. I know he has smoke alarms on the inside of the house, so I don't know what kind of shape he is in to run out, but, hopefully we won't have to see that. But I'll certainly ask Scott and see what he says.
I appreciate
it. Is it a hazard for him to get his, can he get his trucks down there or however it works,
Head Coach Rilla here. He's had that, I guess you call it a racing trailer there for many years. I mean, that was there, wow, well over 5 years. That trailer's been there. He uses it, I guess.
Right.
I don't care how long it was there. I'm just saying, I was just making a statement that I seen on top of the trucks. That's how I made it. I'm not looking to give the guy trouble.
I understand, Pete. I'll reach out to Scott and ask him about that.
I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yes, Steve, I think that's a good takeaway. And keep monitoring as and keep monitoring the remaining trucks and see if he gets those up to mass. And we'll look for the next update at the next meeting.
Okay. 2 Bowers Hill. I've been by there. You cannot even see into his house right now because of the leaves. But he got rid of a lot of stuff. I know he got rid of 2 pieces of equipment. They were not his, and he moved some of the stuff to the backyard, is what I'm being told. But I can't see it from the road right now. So I don't know what you guys want to do with that. It was kind of like a small contractor's yard.
Well, Steve,
And, it was brought to our attention.
this is the guy on the corner of Bowers and O'Neill.
O'Neill.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can't see anything from the street now. I don't know
Yeah,
if he's
I
hiding
mean-
a lot of stuff up there, but it looks fine from the street. He's got the other issues with it looks like the shed, but I thought you had addressed that before, so I don't see, unless
We
get a
did.
complaint from Yeah. So unless we get a complaint from his neighbors about the stuff in the backyard, I don't see anything when you drive by. I know that the yard goes up and back, but it looks like he cleaned it up.
Yep. The answer, the shed, the metal part in the propane tanker is supposed to come out of there when he goes, he's applying for another permit to continue the shed, but I told him he's got to get rid of the metal container and the propane tank, which is going to be addressed by the building officials as well.
Yeah. Well, just stay on him with that. But as the contractor's yard, I don't see it. It looks like I don't know if you agree, but it looks like he cleaned it up.
Oh, I do, John, but like you said, it's hard to see right now, because of, it's just hard to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so 47 East Street, we can take that off the agenda. He complied with everything. Totally cleaned up and got his permits and everything's fine there.
Great.
95 Good Hill Road. I went out there with, hello, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good, Steve. Go for it.
Hello? Okay. 95 Good Hill Road. I went out there with Pat, Mike Hurd. I measured off of the house at 95 to where the wood was piled. And it was maybe 1.5 to 2 feet of wood that the gentleman there had just split. So It's off the property of 95 and it's on the property of 117. And he falls under farming exempt. And also, the applicant was very cooperative, and he had no more trucks coming in dropping off wood, no CL&P, Southbury tree, Lewis tree. That's totally ceased. And he moved all the stuff off the front all the way into the backyard. So I'm happy with what he has done out there. We've been in contact just about every day through either text or email. And he does have some exemptions, which I think you may have in your packet. I'm not sure if I emailed them to you, but it's been a working farm for a long time. He also wanted to take me for a walk in the woods and show me between 200 and 250 stumps, you know, obviously from previous trees that were cut down. You can tell the trees on the property way in the back have been sitting for a very long time. The whole thing started is a CL&P truck came in. Some lady almost said it. I don't know, but she called us frantic, so we went out there. I'm happy with the results. If you guys are, Pat was with me. What did you think, Pat?
Pat Cotrella here. Oh, he's done a fantastic job of cleaning up. You know, I think that you know that there's no problem with 95 Good Hill Road, so that should be, you know.
Yeah, that's off. It's not.
That was never a problem, actually.
Right.
So,
well, when you have two properties close like that together, is what that, you know, we send the notice out and then we, you know, investigate it. So, but
Chairman,
I'm happy with the results.
One other thing I'd just like to interject there is that we've also reached out to the property owner for 95 Good Hill Road and let her know that that was actually 117. So she's already been notified you know, about that as well too. So it is 117 that was in question. And then now I think the question for the commission is, now that everything has been pulled back, you know, and the way the property stands right now, is it something that we can now let the wood be processed the way that it should be and get this clean and get the rest of it cleaned up?
Mr. Chairman?
Chairman, if I can just interject, this is John Kerwin. How do you elevate a commercial wood chipping? And he's got a mulcher up there. It's a fairly large. It looks like there's a big conveyor belt. Actually, it looks like a stone crusher, but it's got a narrower conveyor belt. I assume it's for bark mulching.
The conveyor belt it's a process. The conveyor belt's a process machine to pick up wood, cut it, and stack it. And he could do that off the farm because they're farm exempt. It's basically the same thing if you have cows or chickens and you're selling your beef and pork, you can do that. But you can't import cows and chickens and pigs to sell to somebody else. You have to raise them on your property and sell them. You cannot import. The problem was Mr. Drayton was importing wood and selling it. That has since stopped. And you can see where the new wood is and the old wood is. There's all kinds of state statutes on that, and there's something in our charter. You can do it. I think I did copy somebody on the commission. I had some stuff from Mrs. Vale, who was at 117.
Yeah, are you done? I don't want to cut you off, Steve.
Yeah, no, I am, John. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a residential property. As farming goes, he can cut down trees and process them, but he's got enough trees to cover half of Oxford there. That's not farming. That's a commercial operation. He's allowed to cut down his own trees, but that's not what he's doing now. He's got a mulcher. All that wood that was brought in, that doesn't constitute farming. I don't know where he's cutting down any more trees. I don't think there's any more areas. That in and of itself, just because you were a farmer, I mean, farmers do a lot of things. It has to be.
Well, you have to.
22A, I think I'd have to check 51. It has to be reasonable agricultural.
Please let John finish. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry?
You don't just get to call yourself a farmer and then do whatever you want. It has to be farming related activities. This isn't farming where he's growing timber and cutting it down. this is
Well,
this is a business where he's importing the wood, processing it, and then selling it. So
Well, and he knew that, and that has since stopped. And he assured me he can get this stuff cleaned up by, November or December. But I think he hired a forester to come down over the years and to wean out the property. And that field you see there, was all trees. I mean, some of the trees he has on the ground are probably 5 or 6 years old. Like I said, you have to see I read a lot about it. The town promotes it. In my mind, it's the same thing as raising cattle and chickens and having hundreds of them and you sell them. That's how I look at it. He had foresters come down, mark the trees, what to cut, what not to cut, wean out the woods, et cetera, et cetera. He's been up there for a long time. And like I said, it was brought to our attention because of a couple commercial trucks dropping stuff off. And he knew it. He was very cooperative and he knew, he was wrong. And we addressed it and he didn't hide anything. He said, I'll do anything you guys want to do. And, and he did it. The conveyor belt you're seeing is that's a processor. You put a log up, it cuts it, it splits it. It may stack it all at once. But if he's getting material off the property, he can certainly do that. I'm sorry?
Steve, if I could interject for a moment, because we seem to be kind of going around and coming back to some of the same things again here. I'm happy about the fact that the property owner is committed to there's not going to be any more new wood that's going to be coming in here for processing. I think John makes a valid point in terms of looking at the property. Does it fall under a commercial operation or not? I think it's worth investigating, but I don't think we're going to answer it tonight. So I think that may be a takeaway for us to look at, to talk a little bit about at the next meeting. So rather than kind of belabor this a little bit, I appreciate it. I think things have moved forward in terms of it being cleaned up. That's a good thing. Let's take a look now at the logistics behind it, and we can talk about that at our next meeting. And I really appreciate the Jeff Drayton at 117 in terms of all his cooperation and helping us with that as well too.
Yeah. No, I've got correspondence. I've got correspondence from 117 on this.
Yes. So is that okay? Go ahead, John. You have a question?
Yeah, and I know Mr. Drayton is there, and I drive by there all the time, and the property does look really nice now. He did a good job cleaning it up, so I do appreciate that. Maybe Steve just, Mr. Drayton let Steve come by and make sure he's not bringing any new wood onto the property. We clear it out and keep going forward. I think
okay.
The suggestion was a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't hear that last thing. I'm sorry, you're breaking up. What did you say?
If Mr. Drayton would allow you to come and just check and make sure no new wood is being delivered to the property, you'd be able to see that, man. And then we just move forward. But I don't know if you heard, I thought Mr. Drayton did a great job cleaning it up. I drive by there all the time, and the property looks great.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Pete.
Yeah, I went by the residence also, 95. It really looks good. It's all cleaned up. It's all neat and clean. So all set there.
117. Very good. All right. Very good. All right. Steve, was there anything else from zoning enforcement's perspective?
No. I'll have some stuff.
Okay. Well, Steve, thank you very much, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Next topic on the agenda is Keith, who's been patiently waiting from a municipal planner perspective. So, Keith, what do you have?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you a little bit. I have nothing for tonight, but I will have a presentation at the next meeting. I just got some information from Pat. We'll work on this on the following week, and then we'll present the course of action we'd like to take.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for your help with the motions, putting those together, for earlier in the meeting. And I appreciate your support there as well.
Yes, I'd like to thank Jess as well.
Very good. Thanks.
You bet.
Next up is minutes. Jess, if you can let us know what's happening with minutes.
Yeah, if you could table these, that would be good.
Motion to table.
Yeah, okay,
Second.
perfect. Love it.
Motion table second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Stunning. Okay. Invoices?
None.
Other business, we have the bond release, request from Jim Galligan.
Mr. Chairman, Pat Cotrella here.
Yes, Pat.
I'd like the chance to review this documentation a little more. Can we table this to the next meeting?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of tabling, there's a chance to review the documentation.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have the sign letter, and I'll be the first to say I did not get a chance to go through that organization list. Did anybody have a chance to go through the list that that Jess created, or is that something we want to talk about at the next meeting as well?
I say talk about it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Table that one.
All right. I don't think we need a motion for that, so we'll table that. Any other business the commission deems necessary for discussion? There is one thing, and this is just going to take 2 seconds, but there was a little bit of things happening very quickly at the last moment for this meeting, and I just want to make sure everybody gets their thoughts and points across. When we have something for the commission that we want to share, so something that, a draft of a letter that somebody has created, or pictures or more information about something that would apply that we want to consider in our deliberations, we can't get it to Jess at the last minute to be able to get it into the packet and get it distributed to everybody across the board. So I'd like to think about if we set up anything you want to have distributed to the commission by Jess, we get it to her within 48 hours before the meeting. Is that a fair to kind of make it so everybody has a chance to read it, digest it, and be able to do it?
Sounds good.
That sound good to everybody?
Yeah. That's at least 48 hours. You should do it.
So that means that you email it to her. She's going to have it in her hands on Monday morning, and that does give her some time in terms of coordinating the packets and everything instead of having things show up later than that. So just want to be fair to her and also make sure you guys are getting everything that you need to be able to evaluate it, as soon as possible rather than late in the game. So that was my thought process behind that. And welcome to talk about it more at the next one, but that's what I'm going to be looking at least in the immediate future. And now, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Let the record show the meeting adjourned at 11:07 p.m.
Thank
Just
you.
for the record, this is nowhere near the longest meeting we've ever had.
Close.
No, not even close.
Guys, thank you. There was a lot of stuff there and a lot of conversations. And I'm
We had around 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
All right. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good
Thank
night,
you,
guys.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.